Hello, hello, hello. What's going on, chat? How we doing? Well, I was gonna hop on Farming Simulator, but I've been kind of having the itch to play some Call of Duty. So I'm currently downloading that right now. And we're gonna play some Call of Duty tonight. Move in there. Stop moving. I need to get a better stand. I don't know if I like that stand all that much. Kind of shakes. I guess I never really noticed it when the webcam shaked. But yeah, I kind of have the itch to play some Call of Duty, so we're gonna play COD. I didn't really feel like playing a single player game. Um, but I think we have about 19 minutes left of COD. So let's go ahead mute our music here. And my God, why is there an update to this shit? Why is it being weird? Stream Deck. There we go. I don't know what is going on with this, but I was in the middle of I was kind of watching some videos from this. He popped up on my feed and there's some interesting videos. Let's see. You can't feed the trolls, but you can hunt them.
Today's story is about a group of internet gamers who played together for years. But one day, in their online world, the line between reality and fantasy suddenly blurred, and nobody could tell what was real and what was fake, until it was too late. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So if that's of interest to you, please adjust the like button's power seats in their car to a very uncomfortable position and then rip out the fuse. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
I'll have to look him up.
At 3:30 p.m. on July 27, 2019, a 22-year-old college student named Nicole logged onto her gaming computer in her bedroom in North Carolina. Nicole had spent the morning and the early part of the afternoon studying, but now she could finally kick back and relax and play her favorite video game, an online multiplayer combat game called Perfect World, where people battled each other as characters inspired by Chinese mythology. Perfect World was a pretty niche game, so not a whole lot of people played it or even knew about it, but Nicole loved it, and she played it basically every day for the past few years, was totally hooked on it, and in playing it, she had met about a dozen other people from all over the world who also were obsessed with this game. And together, they had formed a virtual community, and they used a messaging app called Discord to communicate with each other outside of the game. So, on this particular day, after Nicole loaded up Perfect World, she also opened up her Discord chat, and she saw already that several of her friends were online, and they were all talking on the
Get this
general chat
headache.
inside
Come
of their
on,
server.
I'll be right back.
And so Nicole began
I gotta go take some ibuprofen. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's just a freaking sinus headache that I have, but
perusing the
I gotta buy
messages,
some
and she
sinus
saw the
pills.
general theme of the messages being passed
Been pretty
was
bad the
about one
past
of the
couple
other
days here.
users on their server, somebody who went by the username Menhaz. So as far as everyone knew on this Discord server, Menhaz, they didn't know his real name, was a college student, and he was basically known to be a huge troll, which meant he said and did really offensive things, in particular on this Discord server, just to get people's reactions. Because of his trolling behavior, he had actually been previously kicked out of the server and also kicked out of the game Perfect World, like the game they're all connected on this Discord server through. He had been booted from both of those platforms in the past, but in previous occasions when that happened, Menhaz would plead his case and say he's not going to do it anymore, he's going to behave, and eventually the moderators would just let him back in. And so currently, Menhaz was back on the Discord server, and he was back to his trolling ways.
He looks like a troll.
But as Nicole scanned through the general chat and went back and actually saw what Menhaz had been saying that day, that basically had stirred up everybody else on the server to say, look, he's back to his trolling ways. When she went back and actually saw what Menhaz was saying, Nicole couldn't help but feel like today's trolling just felt different. Menhaz was talking about this apparently brilliant 4-step plan he had that was going to completely revolutionize his life and basically set him up for big success in his life going forward. However, this plan he was talking about, this 4-step plan, was not only totally outrageous, but just seemed impossible. Like what he was saying he was going to do just didn't seem possible even by Menhaz's standards. Like within his trolling standards, this was a bridge too far. Like this isn't even trolling. This is just weird what you're proposing. And so basically the chatter on the Discord server this day that Nicole was seeing was how nobody believed this 4-step plan was a real thing. Like this is just classic Menhaz trolling. And Nicole too, she also did not believe this plan was serious. She did not think for a second Menhaz was going to do this. And so she just kind of rolled her eyes, ignored Menhaz, minimized the Discord server, and just enjoyed playing the game, Perfect World. And after a while, after a couple of battles that she won and a couple of battles that she lost in this game, she paused for a second and noticed there was a whole bunch of new notifications on their Discord server. And so because Nicole was already taking a break from the game, she opened up the Discord server to see what was going on. And right away she saw the main topic of discussion was once again Menhaz and his 4-step plan, but specifically Menhaz had just sent a picture through the Discord server that apparently represented completing step 1 of this 4-step plan. He basically said, look, I did it. I've done 1. I'm on to step 2 now. And everybody's looking at this picture thinking, wait a minute, he's actually doing this? This can't be real. And Nicole, when she looked at this picture, she too thought like, no way, this is not possible. He did not do this. And in fact, our first thought was, okay, maybe this image was, created by AI or something, or, maybe he pulled this image off a website somewhere and is pretending it's authentic, but it can't possibly be something he actually took a picture of. He couldn't have done this. And so pretty quickly, Nicole, despite seeing this image, she agreed with the consensus that Menhaz is still just trolling us. This picture is not proof that he's really doing this 4-step plan. And so Nicole went back to playing Perfect World, and about an hour later, she noticed there were all sorts of new notifications on her Discord server. And so once again, she stopped her game, she opened up the Discord server, and once again, the entire chat was dominated about Menhaz, because Menhaz had sent a second picture, apparently representing him completing the second step of his big 4-step plan. And once again, everyone's saying there's no way, he's trolling us, this can't be real. And Nicole, she looked at the image itself, and she too thought this has got to be trolling. But now she wasn't just filled with pure disbelief. She wasn't able to just completely discard what was happening here, because part of her was thinking like, how is Menhaz getting these hyper-specific images that really are tethered to this exact plan he's laid out? Like, how does he have these images?
Oh, I gotta go back. What was the plan again?
Nicole had spent the. Please adjust the like button's power seats to our channel. Get into.
Sorry, I had to go back.
On July 27, 2019, a 22-year-old college student named Nicole logged onto her gaming computer in her bedroom in North Carolina. Nicole had spent the morning and the early part of the afternoon studying, but now she could finally kick back and relax and play her favorite video game, an online multiplayer combat game called Perfect World, where people battled each other as characters inspired by Chinese mythology. Perfect World was a pretty niche game, so not a whole lot of people played it or even knew about it, but Nicole loved it, and she played it basically every day for the past few years, was totally hooked on it, and in playing it, she had met about a dozen other people from all over the world who also were obsessed with this game. and together they had formed a virtual community, and they used a messaging app called Discord to communicate with each other outside of the game. So, on this particular day, after Nicole loaded up Perfect World, she also opened up her Discord chat, and she saw already that several of her friends were online, and they were all talking on the general chat inside of their server. And so Nicole began perusing the messages, and she saw the general theme of the messages being passed was about one of the other users on their server, somebody who went by the username Menhaz. So as far as everyone knew on this Discord server, Menhaz, they didn't know his real name, was a college student, and he was basically known to be a huge troll, which meant he said and did really offensive things, in particular on this Discord server, just to get people's reactions. Because of his trolling behavior, he had actually been previously kicked out of the server and also kicked out of the game Perfect World, like the game they're all connected on this Discord server through. He had been booted from both of those platforms in the past, but in previous occasions when that happened, Menhaz would plead his case and say he's not going to do it anymore, he's going to behave, and eventually the moderators would just let him back in. And so currently, Menhaz was back on the Discord server, and he was back to his trolling ways. But as Nicole scanned through the general chat and went back and actually saw what Menhaz had been saying that day, that basically had stirred up everybody else on the server to say, look, he's back to his trolling ways, when she went back and actually saw what Menhaz was saying, Nicole couldn't help but feel like today's trolling just felt different. Menhaz was talking about this apparently brilliant 4-step plan he had that was going to completely revolutionize his life and basically set him up for big success in his life going forward. However, this plan he was talking about, this 4-step plan, was not only totally outrageous, but just seemed impossible. Like what he was saying he was going to do just didn't seem possible even by Menhaz's standards. Like within his trolling standards, this was a bridge too far. Like this isn't even trolling, this is just weird what you're proposing. And so basically the chatter on the Discord server this day that Nicole was seeing was how nobody believed this 4-step plan was a real thing. Like this is just classic Menhaz trolling. And Nicole too, she also did not believe this plan was serious. She did not think for a second Menhaz was going to do this. And so she just kind of rolled her eyes, ignored Menhaz, minimized the Discord server, and just enjoyed playing the game, Perfect World. And after a while, after a couple of battles that she won and a couple of battles that she lost in this game, she paused for a second and noticed there was a whole bunch of new notifications on their Discord server. And so because Nicole was already taking a break from the game, she opened up the Discord server to see what was going on. And right away she saw the main topic of discussion was once again Menhaz and his 4-step plan, but specifically, Menhaz had just sent a picture through the Discord server that apparently represented completing step 1 of this 4-step plan. He basically said, look, I did it. I've done 1. I'm on to step 2 now. And everybody's looking at this picture thinking, wait a minute, he's actually doing this? This can't be real. And Nicole, when she looked at this picture, she too thought like, no way, this is not possible. He did not do this. And in fact, our first thought was, okay, maybe this image was, created by AI or something, or, maybe he pulled this image off a website somewhere and is pretending it's authentic, but it can't possibly be something he actually took a picture of. He couldn't have done this. And so pretty quickly, Nicole, despite seeing this image, she agreed with the consensus that Menhaz is still just trolling us. This picture is not proof that he's really doing this 4-step plan. And so Nicole went back to playing Perfect World, and about an hour later, she noticed there were all sorts of new notifications on her Discord server. And so once again, she stopped her game, she opened up the Discord server, and once again, the entire chat was dominated about Menhaz, because Menhaz had sent a second picture, apparently representing him completing the second step of his big 4-step plan. And once again, everyone's saying, there's no way, he's trolling us, this can't be real. And Nicole, she looked at the image itself, and she too thought this has got to be trolling. But now, she wasn't just filled with pure disbelief. She wasn't able to just completely discard what was happening here, because part of her was thinking, like, how is Menhaz getting these hyper-specific images that really are tethered to this exact plan he's laid out? Like, how does he have these images? Where are they coming from? Now, this was back in 2019, and certainly AI technology existed, but not the way it does now, where, the average user can literally in seconds create hyper-specific images using AI. In 2019, that really wasn't available to most people. And so really the only way Menhaz could potentially have these images, at least in Nicole's mind, was he had to have pulled them off some website somewhere and basically pretended they were images that he took. And so Nicole decided she was actually going to take the 2 images he had sent and reverse image search them to try to figure out where they came from, find the website, where he's pulling them from, because clearly these pictures are not authentic. There's no way Menhaz actually took these photos. But when Nicole reverse image searched both images, nothing came up. Now, Nicole thought, okay, that does seem to suggest these are authentic pictures he really did take, which maybe means he's actually doing this plan, even though that seemed totally preposterous. Or she thought maybe, these images have been pulled from such an obscure website somewhere that I don't have access to, finding them in a reverse image search, that maybe that's what it is. And so at this point, Nicole told herself, you know what, there's got to be a reasonable explanation for this, but I'll tell you this, it can't be that Menhaz is actually following through on this plan. It's not possible. And so once again, she minimized the Discord server and got back into the game. But pretty quickly, Nicole just stopped playing the game because her mind was totally fixated on whatever was going on with Menhaz. And so she opened up the Discord server again, and she saw still everybody in the chat was talking about Menhaz and these 2 pictures he had sent. And basically the server was divided. About half the members believed this really was just Menhaz trolling, and the other half was starting to think that, hey guys, this might be real. He might actually be carrying out this 4-step plan. Those pictures might be real.
Go ahead.
And if that's the case, we have a huge problem. Because this plan, if he actually carries it out, is so completely illegal. He can't do this. This is not okay. And so the faction of members on the Discord server that were starting to sense that this 4-step plan of Menhaz's might actually be real began to talk internally, and they said, look, we can't just sit here and do nothing if Menhaz is actually doing this. We have to stop him. This is not okay. And so in fact, one of these members actually contacted their local police and told them, hey, there's this guy on my Discord server, his username is Menhaz, I don't have his actual name, but he's doing something that could be very bad, and you need to look into it. And so the dispatcher said, okay, well, where does Menhaz live? And the person who had called was like, well, I don't actually know. In fact, I really don't know much about him other than the fact that he goes by Menhaz and he sent these crazy pictures that could be real or not, I don't know. And so eventually the dispatcher just said, look,
it's the odd things in life.
Concerned, but we have nothing to go on here. And remember, this is the internet. People make stuff up all the time. And so pretty quickly after that, the police officer just hung up, and that was that. Are you the type of person who has binged basically all of my YouTube videos, and every week you anxiously wait a new upload? We actually have a separate that are all podcasts in that podcast. The favorite video and head do that. Mr. Ball and Dad. So at this point, Nicole and the other members of the Discord server who were starting to suspect that what Menhaz was doing could be real, at this point, they felt really alone. I mean, the local police was not taking this seriously, which did make sense. I mean, they had nothing to go on. But as a result, it was like nobody was doing anything about what Menhaz was claiming. And Nicole and the other members who, again, were beginning to sense this could be real, they felt terrible about just sitting here doing nothing. And so Nicole and a few other members of the Discord server decided to team up digitally and actually investigate Menhaz themselves, try to figure out who this guy is and really what's he up to. And so Nicole and this new investigative group started by combing through all the chat logs in their Discord server to see if Menhaz at any point had either intentionally or unintentionally dropped hints about his real name and his location. And eventually they came across a message where Menhaz actually said his real first name was Menhaz. That wasn't just his username, that was his real name. And that was great because Menhaz was a pretty unique name. And so Nicole and the group thought, okay, well, if we find where in the world that name is somewhat common, maybe that will give us a rough idea of where to look for Menhaz in the world. They also knew that Menhaz was a college student, or at least he claimed to be. Now, he never actually said where he went to college, but he would often, in the Discord server, tell people when he was going to be on the server and when he was going to be off the server, like for classes and for studying and that kind of thing. He would say, okay, hey, I'll be on at 6 p.m. tonight, or I'll be off at 9, I'll be back on at 8. He would give these specific times, and he would always use Eastern Standard Time when he did that. And so a natural assumption that Nicole and her group made was, okay, very likely Menhaz lives in the Eastern time zone. And that time zone included the entire east coast of the United States, eastern and central Canada, and also some countries in South and Central America. But while that was helpful, it still created too broad of an area in the world for this group to realistically look for Menhaz. It was nearly impossible to actually figure out where he was. But they now had a sense of where he could be, and they thought, okay, well, why don't we ask somebody else in the Discord server if they can try to track Menhaz's IP address? An IP address can be used to find the approximate geographical location of a computer. And sure enough, someone in the server said they could do that, and within a few minutes, they had tracked Menhaz's computer to Toronto, Canada. However, right at the same time they were figuring this out, Menhaz sent a third picture across the Discord server, a picture that showcased him completing step 3 of this 4-step plan, allegedly. And for Nicole and many other members of this Discord server, this third picture really represented a big shift, because now it was getting terrifying. Because look, it seems pretty likely at this point that Menhaz is actually doing this. This is real. How could he possibly have these hyper-specific photos that are perfectly synced with this 4-step plan he had come up with? This feels real. And so Nicole, she actually asked the person who had traced his IP address to Toronto, she said, hey, should we call the Toronto police and tell them what's going on here? You know, maybe they can go find him and stop him before he completes this plan. I mean, he's apparently completed 3 steps. There's only 1 step left. We have to stop him here. But the person who had tracked his IP address to Toronto said, look, what are the police gonna do? There's 6 million people that live in Toronto, and all we have is that maybe his computer is in Toronto and maybe these pictures are real. And also, by the way, it's pretty easy to mask your IP address. You can use something called a VPN, or virtual private network, that when you track someone's IP address that has one of those working, it will make it seem like their address is, for example, in Toronto or Chicago or New York or Dallas or anywhere in the world, when in reality, their computer is somewhere totally different. And so the police are not going to launch a manhunt based on an IP address. It's not 100% accurate. And so basically, Nicole realized that even though they saw they are on the precipice, potentially, of Menhaz committing some horrible crime, and they can't do anything about it because they don't really have any information about Menhaz. And so at this point, everybody on the Discord server was basically begging Menhaz to come clean. Tell us these photos are fake. Tell us this plan of yours is really just you trolling. But Menhaz didn't do that. He doubled down and said, oh no, these are all real. And in fact, I'm going to complete step 4 of this plan and complete the whole process in 30 minutes. And after that, all Nicole and the other members of the Discord server could do was just try to convince Menhaz not to do this. Don't follow through with this. Don't complete the plan. You gotta stop. It's not worth it. But Menhaz refused and said, I'm doing this no matter what. And sure enough, 30 minutes later, Menhaz would send one final picture, the 4th picture, showcasing that his 4-step plan was now complete. At this point, someone from the Discord server did call the Toronto police. The following day, at about 3:30 p.m., police officers arrived outside of Menhaz's home, which it would turn out was located in a small town just north of Toronto. The IP address had been correct. By this point, it had now been about 24 hours since Menhaz had sent the very first picture of his 4-step plan. Police knocked on the front door, having no idea what to expect here. They had seen the images Menhaz had sent on the Discord server, but at this point, until they went inside, they had no idea if they were dealing with a terrible crime or a terrible joke. When the door opened, Menhaz himself was standing in the doorway. He had a totally neutral, very calm expression on his face. He was very gracious. He welcomed the police inside. And when they stepped inside, they asked him, what's going on here? And all Menhaz said was, you'll see. So the police walked further into the home and eventually made their way upstairs. And when they got up there, they just froze. Because it would turn out, Menhaz was not trolling. Those pictures were not fake. He really had carried out that 4-step plan. It would turn out, for the past 4 years, Menhaz had been living a double life. To his friends and family, he was a college student studying engineering, and he was on a path to great success, when in reality, He dropped out of college in his first year and just pretended to go to school every day, when in reality he would just go to a local mall and hang out there, and then in the evenings when school was over and he would come back home, he would just immerse himself in video games, specifically that Perfect World game. That's what he did. He just went to the mall and played video games and lied to his friends and family. But July 27th, 2019, the day Menhaz put his four-step plan into action, was literally the last day he could maintain this ruse. Because the next day, July 28th, 2019, was the day Menhaz was scheduled to graduate from his college. And so his friends and family were all expecting to be there and to see this amazing ceremony. And so to deal with the fact that his real life and his fake life were about to collide, Menhaz came up with his four-step plan. And he literally told the members of the Discord server about his big plan, but nobody believed him because he was always trolling people. It just seemed like, oh, this is made up, another one of Menhaz's lies. But he was not lying. It was all true. Those pictures that he sent across were absolutely authentic. He took those pictures, and they did represent completing each step in the plan. The first picture was of his mother, the second picture was of his grandmother, the third picture was of his sister, and the fourth picture was of his father. And in each picture, those people were dead, because Menhaz had spent the day methodically killing his entire family to prevent them finding out about his lie. He hit them over the head with a crowbar and then slit their throats and took a picture, posted it to Discord. By the time someone from Discord finally got in touch with the Toronto police, it was too late. Menhaz had obliterated his entire family. Menhaz ultimately pleaded guilty to 4 counts of murder and was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 40 years.
Fucked up.
Thank you so much for watching. Today we have a very special video for you guys. We have a collection of 5 disturbing photo stories, and the first one you're going to hear is totally brand new. And the other 4 are fan favorites, where at the end of each of
This
them,
guy just
you'll
popped
see a
up
very
on my
disturbing
feed today.
photo, and each story gets progressively more disturbing as we go. Now, even if you've seen those 4 other stories, don't worry, they've all been totally re-edited, remastered, kind of rethought through, so it'll feel like a new viewing experience. And again, also, the very first story of this video is completely brand new. But before we get into those 5 stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right. Please watching you on their bathroom mirror channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly updates.
No, I
Okay,
don't
let's
think
get
I have.
into today's stories.
We're gonna eventually hop on Call of Duty.
At 4:45
That's what we're playing
a.m.
tonight.
on Saturday, January 17th, 2015, a 27-year-old farmer named Caleb Whitby drove his pickup truck down a highway in southeastern Oregon. Caleb knew conditions for driving were not great. In fact, they were kind of awful. The road was icy, it was foggy out, the sun wasn't up, so it was pretty dark out. But he felt like he didn't really have a choice. He had to go pick up a shipment of cattle for his family's farm. After driving for another 10 minutes or so down this road, so it's just before 5 a.m. at this point, Caleb found himself right behind this big semi-truck who was going under the speed limit. And so Caleb's cruising along here, getting frustrated, and he's thinking about passing the truck. But when he kind of peeked around the side and looked up ahead of the truck, he saw there was a very sharp turn coming up, and he didn't really have enough runway to make the pass, at least not safely. And so Caleb just kind of throttled back and decided he would make the pass after making the turn. And so the semi-truck, which is right in front of Caleb, it ends up making this turn and gets out of sight of Caleb. And then a moment later, Caleb makes the same turn, and as soon as he does, he sees something that he couldn't have seen before. He's seeing it right now that sends a jolt of panic through his body, and reflexively, he jams on his brakes, he loses control of his truck, it starts to slide, and all Caleb can do is just brace and pray that he doesn't get killed. And then a second later, he heard a loud crunching sound, and then his truck stalled, and everything went quiet. But the silence was broken when suddenly there was another crunching sound, and at the same time, Caleb suddenly felt his lungs getting crushed together, and all the air was just pulled out of his body. Moments later, a different semi-truck driver was going down the same stretch of highway that Caleb had been, and he rounded that exact same turn, and when he did, he saw the same thing that had horrified Caleb and caused him to swerve out of control. Except this semi-truck driver, when he hit his brakes, he was able to basically maintain his truck, and he sort of gently hit the guardrail.
Yeah, I
and,
subbed to him earlier
crashed,
because I didn't want to
but
forget
it
his
didn't cause
channel.
any damage to him or really to his truck.
He's got pretty
So
good
after kind of
videos.
composing himself, this semi-truck driver got out of the cabin.
It bothers
and
me
looked
how he
out
says
at this
semi.
unbelievably horrific scene in front of him, and
Fucking
instinctively
semi,
knew
not
if
semi-truck.
He goes forward and inspects this, he's just going to see dead bodies, and he didn't know if he could even handle that. And so he's just standing there in utter shock when he hears this sound. And he knows this sound is something that he has to go investigate. And so even though he was terrified of, potentially seeing dead people, he walked towards the sound, and suddenly he saw where it was coming from. And he just couldn't believe what he was looking at. It would turn out when Caleb Whitby rounded that corner and then saw this horrible thing that caused him to crash, well, what he saw was a massive pileup of over 24 cars just completely blocking the road. And so he smashed on his brakes and he tried to stop himself, but ultimately he smashed into the semi-truck that just moments before he had been driving behind. The semi-truck had also crashed. And so Caleb has now crashed into the side of the semi, and everything's silent for a second, and then another semi-truck comes around the corner. Caleb can't go anywhere, and that semi-truck blasted into the back of Caleb's car. After that, the other semi-truck, the third semi-truck, if you will, rounds the corner, sees the pileup, hits the brakes, but this guy, he manages to crash into the guardrail, avoiding major injury and damage to his truck. And so he gets out of his truck, and he's surveying this horrific scene, and he hears a sound. And he follows that sound right into the crash, and eventually he finds it. And that sound was Caleb. Here is a picture that this driver took of Caleb, of what he found when he found Caleb. It's unbelievable. Somehow, when Caleb's
That's
truck was
crazy.
smashed from both directions, it created this perfect pocket of space just big enough for Caleb to fit inside of. And so despite being smashed together by two semi-trucks in this huge pileup, Caleb was basically unhurt. And so when this third semi-truck driver found Caleb, he actually was able to, after taking this photo, pull Caleb out of the wreckage, and minus a bruise and a couple of cuts on his face, Caleb actually was just fine and ultimately walked away. And in fact, after first responders showed up and cleared the wreck, it would turn out that incredibly, nobody was killed.
Crazy.
As many of you may know, aside from telling stories on this YouTube channel, I also tell stories on my flagship podcast, the Mr. Ballin Podcast, Strange, Dark, and Mysterious Stories. And in addition to that
I'm gonna have to get him on.
we over at Ballin Studios actually have a whole slate of other incredible strange, dark, and mysterious
I'll look 'em
podcasts
up.
for you to enjoy. If you're into baffling and horrifying medical mysteries, well, check out my other podcast I host called Mr. Ballin's Medical Mysteries. Or maybe you want to hear somebody else from Ballin Studios with a far better radio voice tell you a story, like Luke Lamanna. Luke has two podcasts under the Ballin Studios umbrella. One is called Wartime Stories, which sort of mirrors what he does on YouTube, also called Wartime Stories. It's like the strange, dark, and mysterious meets the battlefield. And he also has a show called Redacted. It's brand new, and it delves into government conspiracies and cover-ups. It's wild. Ballin Studios also has shows that are just pure nightmare fuel, like Bedtime Stories with host Richard White. In between, it's Barnes with him, one of a kind. Just going to any podcast platform and looking up Ballin Studios, and boom, you'll see all of our One of the most insane jobs in the world is being a saturation diver for an oil and gas company. These highly specialized divers go down to extreme depths to do construction.
I think I've
and
heard this
demolition
story
on
before.
underwater structures. The extreme pressure on their bodies from being so deep will cause some of the mixed gas they breathe to get trapped inside of their body. Now, this is harmless while it's happening, so while they're down at depth, this doesn't matter. But when they ascend, they have to do what's called decompression stops, where they basically stop in the water column at certain depths and just wait and allow these trapped gases to naturally come out of their body. Now, if they skip these decompression stops and just rush to the surface, those trapped gases will not leave their body and they will expand inside of them, causing a condition called decompression sickness, or the bends, and it can be fatal. Now, these decompression stops get longer and longer the deeper you go. And in the case of saturation divers, they'll go as deep as 2,000 feet. And for reference, in order to safely ascend from 2,000 feet, it would take you about
I had a
33
factor meal.
hours.
It was amazing.
And so these oil and gas companies can't afford to have their divers taking 33 hours in between dives. And so they came up with a clever workaround. They built a pressurized chamber system on board ships and oil rigs where their divers would live in between their dives. And what this did was, by keeping their divers constantly under pressure, either literally underwater or in this system, the trapped gases inside of them didn't have a chance to expand, and so their divers couldn't get the bends. The divers would live inside of this incredibly cramped chamber for weeks at a time, getting transported to and from the seafloor inside of this small pressurized sphere that's called a dive bell that could detach from the chamber without totally depressurizing the whole system. At the end of these divers' multi-week
I believe it's like a
shifts,
sharp
they
pain,
would
like
do
someone
one
taking a
long
knife and
decompression
stabbing you.
stop inside of the chamber. And then when they were done, they'd step out of the chamber and they'd be fine again. In September of 2012, a 32-year-old saturation diver named Chris Lemons was on board a dive ship in the middle of the North Sea. He, along with 11 other divers, had just started a
I don't know about getting shot, though.
shift. On the 12th of that month, Chris, along with 2 other divers named Dave and Duncan, were scheduled to perform routine maintenance on an oil platform.
Yeah, I've
330 feet
heard this
below the
story
surface.
before.
The North Sea
I think there's a
is notorious for
Netflix series
terrible
on
weather,
it.
But this day, the weather was
Or
especially
Netflix
bad, and they
documentary on
considered
it.
not doing the dive, but ultimately they decided to do it anyways. As Chris, Dave, and Duncan put on their diving equipment and climbed from their living chamber through the tunnel into the dive bell, the captain of the ship navigated directly over this oil platform and then flipped on autopilot mode, which activated dynamic positioning. Now, dive ships rely heavily on dynamic positioning, which is really just this high-tech computer that makes sure, as soon as you turn it on, that the ship does not move from a particular spot in the water. So regardless of the swells and the wind, the ship stays steady. And this is really important when you have divers in the water, because the dive bell is connected to the ship and the divers are connected to the dive bell. And so if the ship is moving all over the place, so is the dive bell, and so are the divers, making it impossible for the divers to do their job. Once the captain had the dynamic positioning up and running, the 3 divers sealed the door of the dive bell behind them, and then
Forgot
the
what
dive bell
happened
was
to
detached
him.
from the chamber and then lowered through a hole in the middle of the ship into the ocean. Once the bell got down to 330 feet, Chris opened up a hatch on the bottom of the dive bell that led directly into the water. Now, because the pressure inside the bell matches the pressure outside the bell, water does not come in through this hole. Duncan was the bellman for the night, so he would not be going out and doing any diving. He would be staying in the bell to support Dave and Chris. And so he helped them get their big helmets on and connected their umbilical to each of them. Sat divers, when they're outside of the bell, are completely reliant on their umbilical. It's this long stretch of tubes and wires that are connected directly to their suit and to their helmet, and it provides air as well as heat and electricity to their lights, and it provides radio communication up to the people on the boat. Once Chris and Dave were all set up, they slipped through the hole at the bottom of the bell, which brought them down to this little platform that was
I'm gonna
suspended
like
right
it just
below the
so
bell.
actually.
And from there, they leapt off all the way down to
Where
the seafloor. Now,
is?
sat divers will say that leap from that platform is both amazing and terrifying, because once you leave the bell, it's completely pitch black all around you, so there's no reference point of how
Watch
fast
later.
you're going or even how close to the ground you are. And so it feels like you're just sinking into this endless abyss before you crash into the ground. Once Chris and Dave did hit the ground, they stood up and began walking, and they were directed by the radio in their helmet which direction they needed to go to reach this oil platform. The oil platform was 11 meters tall, and it looked like a sort of pyramid of these big steel pipes. They climbed up the side until they reached their respective working area, and then they settled in to do their job, which they expected to take about 6 hours. At first, everything was going to plan, but about an hour into the job, something went terribly wrong on the surface. The dynamic positioning computer failed. Now, the captain immediately saw it and just expected the backup computer to kick in and take over. But in a terrible turn of luck, the backup computer also failed. And so very quickly, this huge dive ship began drifting in the rough seas dragging with it the dive bell and the divers 330 feet below. While the captain struggled to try to fix the system and get it back online and get the ship back on station, another crew member hopped on the radio and called down to Dave and Chris, who were outside of the dive bell, and told them to abandon the structure and get back in the bell ASAP. And Chris and Dave could tell from the urgency in this person's voice that this was no drill, this was serious. Chris and Dave were both positioned on the south side of the structure about halfway up, and their umbilicals were running straight up the structure and then northward because the ship was drifting northward. So neither Chris nor Dave could go around the structure. They needed to go straight up before being able to climb their umbilicals back up to the bell. And so both men began climbing, but they could feel the tension on their umbilical was getting tighter and tighter, and Dave managed to get all the way to the top, and he cleared the lip, and as soon as he was on top, he started getting pulled away from the structure. And he looked to see if Chris was also getting pulled, and all he saw was Chris's umbilical, impossibly stretched, still draped over the south side, and he could not see Chris. And that's when Dave, Duncan, and all the people on the surface heard Chris come over the radio frantically saying he was stuck on the underwater structure. His umbilical had gotten wrapped around one of the pylons. And so through the radio, Chris asked Duncan to give him more slack. But Duncan said, "There is no more slack. We are completely tight here. You have to get it free." And Chris would say, "I can't unfree it. It keeps getting tighter and tighter. I can't get it off the pylon." And so Dave jumped down onto the platform and tried to pull himself over to Chris, but his own umbilical was getting pulled towards the dive bell, and so he could not help Chris. And so Dave knew he couldn't do anything, so he turned and began crawling up his umbilical towards the dive bell, and as he's climbing, he hears behind him this extremely loud explosion. It sounded like a shotgun going off. And what it was
I've had
Chris's
it a couple
umbilical
times.
snapping under the tension. As soon as the umbilical snapped, it sent Chris flying backwards off the structure.
I don't eat it very
falling
often, though.
towards the ocean floor. Without his umbilical, he wouldn't have had light. He wouldn't have had a radio to talk to anybody up on the boat. He wouldn't have had heat, and the water was just barely above freezing, and so he would have been very cold very fast, and he would not have had an air supply. Although he would have had 2 backup canisters on his back that would automatically turn on. However, they only gave him 5 or maybe 6 minutes of air. And so when Chris hit the ocean floor, it would have been eerily quiet and totally, completely pitch black. He stood up at some point and looked around him and didn't see anything, but knew he had to get back to the underwater structure. It was his only chance of anybody finding him again. And so he had to make the impossible decision of just choosing a direction and blindly walking, not having any idea what you're walking towards. Choose wrong and you might walk over a cliff. But at some point, Chris made up his mind and just began walking in a single direction, and miraculously, he walked into the underwater structure. He climbed up the side until he got to the top, which was a flat metal grate, and there he looked around and saw there was no dive bell, there was no sign of anything. It was just him. He was completely all alone. And he must have known at this point that he was running out of air. He probably had maybe 1 or 2 minutes left. And so he would have been acutely aware that even if they're looking for him, they're not going to find him in time. He's going to die. And at some point, breathing would have become extremely difficult until there was no more air, and then he would have passed out and keeled over. Back on the surface, the captain was desperately trying to use manual controls to pilot the ship back over where Chris was, but because of how rough the seas were, it was proving to be nearly impossible. As the captain struggled, other members of the crew launched a remote-controlled vehicle into the water to at least go down and try to find Chris. And so they decided they would just pilot straight to the underwater structure and begin looking around that area. And so for a few anxious minutes, the crew on board the ship watched the camera, which was the live feed coming from this underwater vehicle, as it went through totally dark water. And then at some point on the screen, the structure just appeared, and the vehicle, as it went up towards the top, it got a look at the very top of the structure. And on the screen, they saw Chris lying on his side, totally motionless. At this point, he had been without air for at least 20 minutes. In a last-ditch effort, the captain decided to completely power off the ship and its computer and just do a hard reset, something that you would never do, especially in rough seas, because if it doesn't come back on again, you are dead in the water. But when they turned it back on again, the ship came on and the computer system came back online, including the dynamic positioning computer. And so the captain immediately threw it on autopilot and the ship navigated right over where Chris's last position was. After Chris's umbilical had broken, Dave had managed to climb back up to the bell, and he was just standing underneath that platform right beneath it. And so when the ship got right back over Chris's position, Dave leapt off the platform, got to the seafloor, climbed up the structure, grabbed hold of Chris's body, and hauled him back up into the bell. Once Chris's body was inside the bell, Duncan, the bellman, removed Chris's helmet, and he saw that his face was blue and he was totally lifeless. But Duncan immediately just gave him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. And after giving him 2 big breaths, Chris came back to life. He started gagging and coughing, and he's looking around wide-eyed, and Duncan and Dave are looking at him like, you gotta be kidding me, you're supposed to be dead. And after about 30 seconds, the color in Chris's face had totally come back, and he was looking at Duncan and Dave and asked them, what happened? And Duncan and Dave didn't have an answer for him. And so instead, all 3 men just started laughing and hugging. They could not believe it. Once Chris was brought back up to the ship, the dive medic looked at him and concluded that nothing was wrong with him. He was perfectly fine, despite the fact he had been without an air supply for over 30 minutes. And 3 weeks after the incident, Chris was back down saturation diving again. Today, scientists don't know how Chris survived. The leading theory is that it was just so cold, it slowed his heart and his brain down, and that somehow kept him alive. But the reality is, his survival is a total mystery. Here is what the crew saw when their remote-controlled vehicle found Chris lying on top of that platform. On the morning of February 25th, 2015, in a little house in the city of Cape Town in South Africa, a 17-year-old girl named Misha Solomon was packing up her homework in between bites of her breakfast. And as she did this, her mother, Lavana, walked into the kitchen with a big smile on her face, and she was holding up this beautiful red flowing dress. And immediately Misha knew what it was. Her mom had been making this dress by hand over the past couple of days. It was for a big school dance that was coming up, and she saw that it was now done. And so Misha, she put down her breakfast and her homework, and she rushed over to her mom, and she admired this gorgeous dress and thanked her mom for all the hard work and said it's absolutely perfect. And then from somewhere behind Misha, her father, who was still sitting at the table, kind of grunted out, "Hey, isn't that dress a little bit revealing?" And Misha and her mom kind of just rolled their eyes because they knew Misha's dad just loved his daughter and was very, very protective of her. And so basically anything she wore that wasn't full coverage was too revealing. And so Misha, after rolling her eyes, walked over to her dad. She gave him a big hug and a kiss, and she said, "Dad, don't worry about it. It's just fine." And so after that, Misha went back to her breakfast. She finished eating, she packed up her stuff, and then she gave her mom and her dad another hug and a kiss and said goodbye. And then she headed out the front door out to the road where her aunt was waiting in her car. As Misha's aunt drove her to school, like she did almost every single morning, Misha began to notice her aunt was acting kind of strange and constantly looking behind her and looking in her rearview mirror. And finally, Misha said to her aunt, "What's going on? What are you looking at back there?" And Misha's aunt would say, "I know this sounds crazy, but I'm pretty sure there's a white car that's following me. And in fact, over the past couple of days, I've seen what I think is this same white car following us anytime I'm driving you to school." And so Misha just turned around in her seat and looked out the back window, and she saw there were dozens of white cars on the road, so it was pretty difficult to tell which one her aunt was talking about. But as she's looking, none of the cars seemed suspicious. And so Misha turned back around and told her aunt, "I think you're just being paranoid. Nobody's following us. There's no reason to follow us." A few minutes later, Misha's aunt pulled up alongside the front of the school, and Misha said goodbye to her aunt. She thanked her, she hopped outside, and she rushed into the school. And then Misha made her way up to the hallway where her first class was, and as she was walking down the hallway, her best friend, Cassidy Nurse, was walking up the hallway in her direction. And so right away, Misha sees Cassidy, and she waves and smiles and begins walking towards her. But Cassidy gave Misha this kind of weird, lukewarm smile, and then quickly looked away from Misha, and then Cassidy turned and bolted into the nearest classroom. And so Misha just came to a stop and just looked at the doorway where her best friend has disappeared, and she starts thinking to herself, what's going on? Why did she do that? That was so cold. And then Misha began to think about the fact that actually, over the past couple of days, Cassidy had been acting really strange. It was like she was trying to avoid Misha, but Misha had no idea why. It wasn't like they were fighting. Normally, Misha and Cassidy were totally inseparable. They had met earlier that school year, and even though they were actually kind of far apart in age, Cassidy was in 8th grade and Misha was in 12th grade, It was like it didn't matter. It was like right away when they met each other, they had this special bond where they just had to be around each other all the time. They shared everything with each other. And certainly anytime they saw each other in the hallway, they would stop to chat or even go into a nearby bathroom and do each other's hair and makeup and share any gossip they had recently heard. So for Cassidy to act like this was just totally uncharacteristic, and it really upset Misha. But just then, the bell rang in the school, so Misha knew at this point she was now late for her class, and so she had to forget about whatever was going on with Cassidy, and Misha just hustled down the hallway and went into her classroom. And so Misha, she takes her seat at her desk, she puts her stuff down, and she's getting ready to listen to the teacher, when suddenly the principal comes in without even knocking, and without even saying anything to Misha's teacher, the principal walks right up to Misha and says, "I need you to come with me." And right away, Misha's classmates, all who saw this, they begin oohing and awing as if Misha is in huge trouble. But Misha's thinking to herself, I didn't do anything. Like, I have no idea what this is about. And so she kind of smiled like it was no big deal. She picked up her stuff and she followed the principal out into the hallway. But as Misha followed the principal down the hallway towards the principal's office, Misha's smile faded and she began to wonder, what is this about? What's going on? And then finally, they got to the principal's office. The principal opened up the door. Misha went in first, and the principal trailed behind her and shut the door behind them. When Misha looked into the principal's office, she saw there were already two people inside who she didn't recognize. It was two women who were very serious looking, who were sitting on the side of the room. And as soon as Misha walked in, the two women, without introducing themselves, just told Misha to come over and take a seat next to them. And Misha, instead of doing that, just paused and looked at the women and said, "What's going on?" And at this, the two women kind of looked at each other, and then one of the women piped up and said, "Misha, we're here because the police sent us. And they sent us because of a photo that you and your very close friend Cassidy took." But before Misha could ask any questions like, what photo are you talking about and really what's going on here, these two women would explain the whole situation to Misha. And basically what they did is they told her this long, very convoluted story that involved Misha, it involved Cassidy, it involved this photo. And by the end of this story, this explainer story, Misha had taken a seat and put her hand over her mouth in utter disbelief. And then when the women were done explaining everything, Misha had a million questions, but it was like she was so overwhelmed with what she was just told. That she just continued to sit there with her hand over her mouth, totally silent. And then finally, Misha did break the silence by saying, "Can I please just call my parents?" And at this, the social workers said, "No, you can't. And in fact, the police are already at your parents' house. They're talking to your parents right now. And so you can't talk to them and you can't even go home. In fact, you have to come with us for tonight." And then the two women got up and they made their way out of the principal's office and they said, "Come on, Misha, you have to come with us." And so Misha stood up and she's totally flabbergasted. She really is like, how is this real life? And the principal at this point walked over and gave Misha a hug. And it was like suddenly the floodgates opened and Misha just began sobbing hysterically. And as she did, the social workers just stood there waiting patiently. And then as soon as it seemed like Misha was done crying, they said, "Come on, you really need to come with us." And so Misha, she let go of the principal and she followed the two women out of the school out to one of their cars. And once they got in the car, the two women explained to Misha that they were going to take her to a safe house for the night. But before they went to the safe house, they would need to make a quick pit stop at a local medical clinic. And so Misha, who at this point is not even asking questions, just said, okay. And so the women, they drove to the medical clinic. They were inside for just a matter of minutes. When they came back out again, they drove the rest of the way to the safe house. And when they got to the safe house, it just looked like a normal house on the outside. But on the inside, when the two women were leading Misha through and showing her where everything was, the kitchen, the bathroom, her bedroom, all Misha saw was all these other kids who were staying there who were orphaned and abandoned. And it started to give Misha a panic attack. And she asked the women again, "Can I please call my parents?" And they said, "No, you really can't." But one of the two social workers could tell that Misha, she's having a breakdown. This is the worst day of her life, very likely. And so one of the two women actually offered to Misha to come home with her and stay at her house instead of the safe house. And Misha agreed. And so that social worker and Misha, they would leave together, they would get into that woman's car, and they would drive to her house. And then the social worker told Misha that unfortunately now it was just a waiting game. They needed to wait for the police to get back in touch with them with more information. That night, as Misha lay in this woman's guest bedroom, looking up at the ceiling, wondering how the heck this had become her life, she began to think about the photo that her and Cassidy had took that had kind of started this whole horrible thing. And so Misha began to think about the day they took this picture, and all she remembered was that she and Cassidy were just kind of goofing around and smiling and making funny faces and just taking photos as they went. She certainly didn't think that one of those pictures they took would totally change her life. The following morning, when Misha woke up, the social worker brought her to their office, the social worker's office, and there they met with the other woman who had first met Misha in the principal's office, and the three of them just sat in the office, not talking much, eating chicken wings and other snacks, just literally waiting for police to call them. And finally, they would call. And when they did, one of the social workers answered the phone, and as she listened to what she was being told, she began to frown, and by the time she hung up, she was crying. The news from the police was the news Misha had been afraid of ever since sitting in the principal's office the day before and hearing this whole crazy story about her and Cassidy and this photo. The special pit stop that Misha and the social workers made at the medical clinic the day before on the way to the safe house was so that Misha could get a DNA test. And now the police were calling back with the results of the test. And what the results showed was Misha Solomon was not actually Misha Solomon. Her real name was Zephany Nurse. 17 years earlier, Zephany Nurse had been stolen out of her crib at the hospital in Cape Town, and despite a massive manhunt for her, she was never found. And so this was a huge, famous case in Cape Town, and most people assumed it would never be solved. But Misha's DNA had done just that. It proved that Misha's parents, who had loved her and raised her since she was a baby, were not actually her parents. Her mother, Lavana, was actually her kidnapper, and now she was under arrest. But even though this revelation was incredibly shocking and upsetting for Misha, it was not
So the
nearly
cops
as
were
shocking
following
as
the
learning
aunt.
the identity of her real biological parents. The social workers took Misha from their office to the police station, where they told Misha her real biological parents were waiting to meet her. And so once they went inside the police station, Misha gripped onto the social worker's arm tightly. She was incredibly nervous, and she was led down a hallway to a door that was shut. And then finally, when Misha was ready, she pushed the door open, and her real parents, who were sitting right in front of her, they stood up and they ran towards her crying. But Misha just stood there, stunned and silent, staring at them. Because these people, they were not strangers to her. She knew them extremely well. They were the parents of her best friend in the world, Cassidy Nurse. Which meant Misha, aka Zephany Nurse,
was Cassidy's sister. Months earlier, when
Crazy.
Misha and Cassidy first met each other, the reason they hit it off so quickly and the reason they had similar senses of humor and liked the same things and looked so dramatically similar is because they were literally sisters. They just didn't know it. And then one day they took a series of selfie photos of themselves, and Cassidy, she would go home and show one of those photos to her parents and say, hey, look, my best friend, Misha Solomon, look how similar we look. And when Cassidy's parents looked at Misha Solomon, they instinctively knew, that is our daughter. That is Zephany Nurse. And so they would bring this photo to the police, and the police would begin to investigate. And during this investigation, they began trailing Misha. So when Misha's aunt told Misha that she thought a white car was following her, she wasn't just being paranoid. Those were investigators following Misha around, trying to get a feel for her schedule, because they needed to approach her when she was alone in order to get a DNA sample. They were worried if they contacted Misha and tipped off what they were doing, she would tell her parents, who were actually her kidnappers, and then potentially they might take Misha and run away. And so they couldn't risk that. They had to basically follow her around and wait for an opening to get this DNA test done. And so this was also the reason why Cassidy was acting so strangely towards Misha in the few days before the truth was revealed. It's because Cassidy knew about this investigation, and the police told her, you can't tip Misha off. She will tell her parents, her kidnappers, and they might abscond with her. And so Cassidy basically felt awkward and kind of just hid from Misha for a couple of days. The woman that Misha had grown up with and called her mom for her whole life, LaVonna Solomon, was ultimately convicted of kidnapping and sentenced to 10 years in prison. There has never been any evidence to suggest that LaVonna's husband, so Misha's dad for her whole life, actually knew that the baby had been kidnapped, because 17 years earlier, LaVonna had been pregnant with their child. But it's believed she miscarried, and LaVonna did not share that with her husband. Instead, she told her husband that she had gone into labor while he was at work and delivered their child, and so that's how they had this baby, Zephany, when in reality, after LaVonna had miscarried, she had at some point dressed up like a nurse, gone into the hospital, and stolen Zephany. For her part, Zephany, aka Misha, stayed in touch with both sets of parents, the fake ones and her biological ones. And she would say that, she still loves the parents who kidnapped her because they raised her and they treated her well. And in fact, Zephany loves the parents. The other part, Zephany dressed up like a nurse, gone into the hospital, and stolen Zephany. For her part, Zephany, aka Misha, stayed in touch with both sets of parents, the fake ones and her biological ones. And she would say that, she still loves the parents who kidnapped her because they raised her and they treated her well. And in fact, Zephany would actually wear that beautiful flowing red dress that LaVonna had stitched for her to her high school dance, well after the news came out about who LaVonna was. Misha also decided that she would just keep the name Misha because that was what she was used to, instead of going back to her baby name, Zephany. Going back to her baby name, Zephany.
Crazy.
There is still some debate about what exactly happened in this story that I'm about to share with you. And so for transparency, in this
I don't know.
video,
I don't mind
I'm
Chick-fil-A.
going to rely on the narrative that was presented in court by the defendant. And so with that in mind, here we go. On the afternoon of December 3rd, 2012, a freelance photographer working for the New York Post newspaper named Umar Abbasi was walking down the stairs of the 49th Street subway station in New York City. This very busy station is located only a few blocks away from the very famous Times Square. And so after Umar made his way down to this underground subway station, he walked over to one of the big automated kiosks that looks like an ATM, and he purchased a subway ticket. And then with his ticket, he walked over to the turnstiles, he slid his ticket through the slot, pushed past the turnstiles, and was now standing out on the actual train platform. And from where Umar was standing, this platform basically was like a huge sidewalk that stretched all the way to his right a couple hundred feet and all the way to his left a couple hundred feet. And in front of this platform were the actual tracks down below, because the train, when it came out of the tunnel, it would actually come right up alongside this platform with almost no clearance between the platform
platform and the train. As such, the leading edge of the platform, basically the lip of the train platform that's closest to the train tracks, has this big yellow line painted all across it to keep commuters from standing too close to the edge, because if the train came through, they could actually get hit by the train. And so as Umar is standing on this platform and he's looking left and right, it's totally crowded with people, and they're all kind of tucked back against the wall away from this yellow line. And so Umar decides he's going to turn right and wait at the right end of the platform, just because he saw down at the...
See, I think the best thing at Chick-fil-A, and I don't really order much from them either. I normally either get the spicy chicken sandwich. That's about the only thing I get from Chick-fil-A. And the sandwich is actually pretty good. It's decent. It's okay. I don't know. I don't really like their sandwich is okay. It's not like top of the line. The best part about Chick-fil-A is their fries. Their fries and the Chick-fil-A sauce. That's the best part about Chick-fil-A.
Far end, there appeared to be a gap in people, and he figured he could stand.
It's really the only thing I like about Chick-fil-A is Chick-fil-A sauce.
All of these people on the right side of the platform, and for the most part, everyone he is passing either has their head buried in their phone, or they're listening to music, or both. Because the thing about riding trains, especially trains in busy cities, is none of the commuters want to talk to anybody else. They want to be completely left alone. And so as Umar is walking, everyone was basically doing that. But at some point, he did pass two people that were engaged in a pretty heated conversation.
Yeah, I can kind of see why
Umar
people say it's overrated. I mean, a lot of people talk about
or
it.
if they were even arguing at all. He didn't know who these people were, but he took mental note of the fact that two men were kind of bickering with each other. And so he walked past them, didn't give it much of a second thought, and he arrived at a gap in the
never had
gaggle
their
of
chicken
people
nuggets
waiting for
or
the
chicken
train.
strips.
And there he just stood well back of the yellow line, where he pulled out his camera and began clicking through the images he had taken earlier in the day at an earlier photo shoot. And so as he's clicking through these pictures, he starts to notice that those two men who had been bickering before are now straight up yelling at each other. They're screaming obscenities at each other. It's not clear who's fighting about what or who was the aggressor, but it's very obvious that at this point they're fighting. And so Umar looked away from his camera and looked left down the platform towards these two guys. And so these two guys are about 100 to 125 feet away from him. And all the people that were standing in the vicinity of these two men are beginning to migrate away from them. They just don't want anything to do with them. Because the thing about being in subways, especially in cities like New York, is there's lots of people that go down into these train stations that are inebriated or mentally unstable. And so very strange and bad behavior is just kind of a normal thing, and people tend to just kind of ignore it. And so that's what's happening. People are kind of walking away from these two fighting men, doing their best to pretend it's not happening. And so Umar spent a couple more seconds staring down the platform at these two men, but eventually just shrugged and thought, you know what, whatever problems they have, they're not mine. And so Umar went back to his camera and continued to click through his pictures, when all of a sudden he hears a scream coming from the left side of the platform. But it was not a scream that sounded like it came from either of these two men. And so Umar looked up from his camera and looked left down the platform, and now he just sees chaos. It's people running away from these two men. People are running to get away from whatever is happening around them. And so Umar's thinking these men must have come to blows, and they're now fighting actively, physically with each other. But when finally the crowd kind of cleared for a second, he saw a woman pointing down at the train tracks right in front of where those two men had been standing. And so Umar looks at the woman and he follows her finger down onto the tracks, and he sees there is now a man, one of the two men who had been fighting, laying face down on the train tracks. And then, to Umar's horror, he looks up down the tunnel where the train would come out of, and he sees the headlights of the train. It is now coming into the station. And so Umar starts running down the platform to try to get to this man to pull him out of the tracks. And as he's running, he pulls out his camera and he turns the flash on and he holds the shutter down and he aims it at the train conductor to hope the flashing of his camera will alert the train conductor to put on the emergency brake and stop the train before he hits this guy down on the tracks. And so as Umar is running, trying to signal this train conductor, the man down on the tracks tries to stand up, and Umar sees he's really struggling to stand, and when he finally gets up, he turns and he grabs the edge of the platform and he tries to pull himself up and out of the tracks, but he doesn't have the strength or the coordination. And as Umar is getting closer and closer, but he's still too far away to help, he sees that this guy down on the tracks is not going to be able to get out of there before the train hits him. And so Umar finally comes to a stop and he watches as this man down on the tracks lets go of the lip of this platform and just turns and faces the train like he knows what's about to happen. And then seconds later, the train, although it did try to stop, impacted this man and killed him instantly. The man's name was Kaisar Khan and he was 58 years old. When the police finally showed up, they arrested the other man who Han had been fighting with. He was a 30-year-old named Naeem Davis, and Davis would actually tell police that he had been fighting with Han and he had pushed him onto the tracks, but it was in self-defense. However, that self-defense story didn't stop him from being charged with murder. While Davis sat in jail waiting for his trial, the media and the public at large had already come to the conclusion that Davis was guilty. And this was due in large part to a particular picture. As Umar was running down the platform, holding up his camera, holding the flash down, trying to flag the train conductor to get him to stop, Umar was also taking dozens and dozens of pictures. And those pictures were of Han right before he was struck by the train. And so after Umar ultimately discovered he had taken these pictures, he gave them to his employer, the New York Post newspaper, and the day after the incident, they ran on the front page a picture of Han right before he's about to be killed with the headline, "Doomed." And so once the public saw this picture, nobody could believe that Davis was anything other than a cold-blooded killer for pushing this poor innocent man onto the tracks. But as it would turn out, nearly 5 years later, when Davis did finally get his trial, he was acquitted of all charges because it turned out Han was very drunk and had picked a fight with Davis, and Davis was filmed on more than one occasion on the platform trying to get Han to leave him alone. And so finally, after Han began making death threats and then grabbed Davis's shoulder, Davis turned around and pushed him, and Han, being drunk, stumbled and fell backwards onto the tracks and then was ultimately killed. Here is the infamous photo of Han on the cover of the New York Post newspaper. On January 30th, 1925, a 37-year-old man named Floyd Collins walked through this huge forest in central Kentucky inside of a national park. As he walked along, his boots splashed in the melting snow and mud on the ground, and above him, all he heard was the sound of water dripping down amongst the leaves. It was warmer than it had been in several days, and so that was why Floyd was out here. He was trying to take advantage of the nice weather. And so after walking for a while on this muddy, slushy trail, the trees around Floyd began to thin out, and then eventually he reached the edge of the tree line, and in front of him was this huge clearing. Now, in this clearing, the trail he was on continued straight ahead, but it came to a stop in front of this huge cavern-like opening in the side of a hill. And so without hesitation, Floyd stepped out of the trees into the sunlight, and he walked the rest of the trail right up to the opening of this cavern, and he stopped and just stared and smiled. This cavern-like space on the side of this hill was the entrance to a cave known as Sand Cave. And Floyd had spent the last week coming out to Sand Cave and exploring the different tunnels, but today his plan was to go as deep and as far inside of this cave as he possibly could. Caves were a huge tourist attraction in this region, and Floyd was a very experienced caver who had been caving since he was 6 years old, and he knew that most of Sand Cave had not been explored. And so if he could go in there and explore all the different parts of the cave and map it all out and make sure it was safe, it was sure to be a huge moneymaker. He could bring people here and lead them on guided tours. So Floyd left the muddy path he had been walking on and stepped foot inside of this grand entrance to Sand Cave. It's basically this 250-foot wide cathedral-like space inside of this hill with ceilings high enough you could stand, but it's totally dark in there. And despite being this big open space, it very quickly funnels to this one kind of tunnel that goes straight down and connects to all these offshoot underground passageways, many of which have never been explored before. And so, as Floyd walked across this big open entryway, he lit his oil lamp and then began mentally preparing himself for what he was about to do, which was going to be very claustrophobia inducing, even for a very experienced caver. And so Floyd reached the back of this huge entryway, and he reached this tunnel that would connect to the rest of the cave, and he began walking down.
Is this the dude
And
that
this
got
tunnel
stuck?
was not very restricting. You could stand in it, you could move around in it, but it was very short. It was 15 feet straight down at an angle, where at the bottom of those 15 feet was a square hole in the ground. And Floyd, having been here the previous week, knew that once you go through this hole, the real caving begins. Now you're going to be down on your hands and knees,
I don't know how anybody
wriggling your
can do
way
that.
through these
Fuck
very
that.
tight and restricting areas where you don't really know where you're going. Because again, a lot of this stuff has never been explored before. But this is why Floyd loved caving. He loved the adventure and the risk of doing things like this. And so Floyd got to this hole, he put
Yeah,
his
fuck
oil
that.
lamp down on the ground, he casually lowered himself feet first into this hole, which dropped down several feet, and then once he was on firm ground, he reached up, grabbed his oil lamp, and pulled it into the hole with him. Once he was inside of this lower level space, he crouched down and looked around, and off to his right was a tunnel that he could crawl through that seemed to lead to a series of other tunnels. And so he puts his lamp in front of him, he gets down, and he begins crawling through this tunnel. And after a little while, he reaches this kind of fork in the road where he had several options of very narrow tunnels to choose from. Now, the previous week, Floyd had gone down several of these tunnels and mapped out where they went, but there was one tunnel in particular at this fork that was very narrow. It was likely the most narrow of all the tunnels, but from where he had seen the last week, it looked like it went pretty far without obstruction. And so he immediately began going head first into this tunnel where he had no idea where it was going to go. Think about that. If you go head first into a tunnel and you get stuck, what are you going to do? You can't really go anywhere. So this guy is like totally fearless, just going head first into what most people would consider a nightmare scenario. And so the way Floyd would approach these very tight tunnels is he would put his oil lamp out in front of him, and then he'd keep his hands over his head, and he'd kind of wriggle his way head first and push his lamp along the way. And so that's what he did. He began going into this really restrictive tunnel. You know, it's hard to breathe because the walls are so tight on his chest cavity. But as he's going, eventually the ceiling begins to slope upward just enough that he can pull himself up onto his hands and knees and kind of catch his breath. By this point, Floyd was approximately 55 feet underground. That's where this little pocket was, where he could get up on his hands and knees and breathe. And so from this position, he still could see with his lamp that this tunnel continued to snake further and further down, and his hope was that eventually it would lead to a big underground chamber that was not just big enough to go to your hands and knees on, but was big enough you could stand and walk around in, because those were the big tourist attractions. Not only because it seems like another world underground that you can fully explore and walk around in, but also, as Floyd knew from his past experience of going into other caves, a lot of times those big underground chambers are full of Native American artifacts. And again, that was a huge potential moneymaker for people like Floyd because it allowed him to advertise that this cave where tourists could go explore was full of all this rich history. And so Floyd eventually, after catching his breath in this little spot, got back down onto his stomach with his hands out in front of him, with the lamp out ahead of his fingers, and he began going deeper and deeper into this unexplored section of Sand Cave. And as he inched along, even though the ceiling remained very tight on top of him, he's totally compressed to the ground, the walls on either side of him began to expand, which meant Floyd, if he wanted to, could actually turn himself around, although he couldn't stand up. And so Floyd is making his way down this very low ceiling area when he notices his oil lamp is beginning to flicker, which means it's going to go out soon. Now, Floyd wasn't concerned about suddenly being in the darkness inside of a cave. Now, to most people, that would be terrifying, but Floyd, again, was so experienced, he was very confident that he could easily make his way out again just by touch. He didn't need the light. But he did know that trying to move around inside of a cave in the darkness was dangerous, and so he should not do that if he could avoid it. And so as much as Floyd wanted to continue and hopefully find something incredible inside of this cave, he decided he really needed to just turn around and go back to the surface and come back the next day to continue exploring. And so, because this part of the tunnel he was in was really wide, he was able to turn himself around and drag his lamp until he was facing back uphill, and then he rolled onto his back. So his head is pointing back up where he came from, and his feet are pointing in the direction that he had previously been traveling, and he's on his back. And so his oil lamp is above his head. He can move his arms side to side because, again, it's pretty wide in the area he's in, but his head is pretty restricted by the ceiling. And he began inching with his heels and pushing with his arms, moving up the tunnel on his back. And as he would move, he'd use his head and his hands to push the oil lamp back up the direction he was going. And for a little while, this system worked great. But at some point, right as he was getting close to that area where he was able to previously get on his hands and knees and catch his breath, Floyd accidentally kind of rushed and pushed his lamp too hard and knocked it over, which extinguished the light. And so suddenly, Floyd was cast into total darkness. Now, again, Floyd was not concerned or really even scared about being in darkness inside of this cave, but this was not a good scenario and he knew it. But he told himself, stay calm. He knew where he was in the cave. He just needed to get to that little pocket. He'd catch his breath, and then he'd continue his way back up, eventually reach that hole in the ceiling, that square hole. He'd climb out, make his way out of the cave, and boom, he'd be done. And so Floyd just continued to push the now extinguished oil lamp above his head, and he continued to inch with his heels and moved his arms around to keep going backwards up this tunnel. But then, right before Floyd reached that pocket inside of the tunnel where he could get onto his hands and knees, he heard the sound of falling rocks somewhere below him, kind of near his legs. Now it's pitch black, he can't see anything, and so Floyd just kind of held his breath and hoped that whatever was happening wouldn't affect him. But then he felt a shooting pain in his left leg.
I think he cut his leg off.
27-pound rock had broken loose from the low ceiling and landed on his left ankle. Now, at first, Floyd was actually relieved that the rock had landed only on his left leg. And in fact, his leg was actually kind of positioned in a depression on the floor of the cave. And so the rock didn't really hit his left ankle directly. It kind of like hit the ground and then leaned onto his left ankle. And his left ankle was kind of protected in the depression in the cave floor. And so Floyd's thinking, thank goodness it only landed on my ankle and not on my head or my chest, because then I'd be dead. And so, after catching his breath and kind of calming down, Floyd tensed his body and pulled his left leg as hard as he could to clear this 27-pound rock, but his foot wouldn't budge. And so Floyd thought he would just reach down and kind of dig his foot out. He'd just move the rock out of the way. But even though this cave had widened out on either side of Floyd when he had gone deeper and deeper into it, because he had retraced his steps, he was farther up the tunnel where those sides had really come in much closer to him. And so he wasn't able to actually reach down and touch the rock. The walls made it impossible. And so he wasn't able to use his hands to clear this rock. And so Floyd is pinned underground, unable to move, in absolute pitch darkness inside of a cave that's practically crushing his chest because the ceiling is so low. And he knows it's unstable. The ceiling has now fallen off, so there's a chance more rocks could come in at any time. I mean, this is like a worst case scenario for anybody who goes caving. But Floyd told himself to just stay calm. He knew this was a very bad situation, but people were certain to find out he was missing, and they knew he had gone to Sand Cave, and they would come here, they would find him, and they would rescue him. And so Floyd just decided he would wait. And for an agonizing 30 hours, remember, 30 hours of pitch blackness, trapped in a totally claustrophobic environment. 30 hours of this, no food, no water, can't go to the bathroom. He's laying there for 30 hours, and then finally, he hears a voice coming from somewhere near the entrance of this cave. And when he heard that voice, it was like the sweetest sound he had ever heard. Because not only did they represent help, but the voice was coming from Floyd's brother, Homer, who was also a very experienced caver. And so Floyd's thinking, thank goodness, I'm saved. And so Homer was able to navigate from the entrance down all the way to the tunnel that Floyd was in. And Homer got to that spot in the tunnel where Floyd had gone to his hands and knees, that pocket there. So Homer's in that pocket, and he can see Floyd is only a few feet away from him. He can see Floyd's head right there. And so Homer, who had a lamp, he shines the light on Floyd, and the two brothers don't waste any time with small talk. Instead, Homer, who had his oil lamp, had set it up right next to them, and he began feeding Floyd sausage sandwiches sandwiches and giving him sips of water. And then Homer would tell Floyd that he just did not have the equipment to help Floyd get out right now, but Homer was going to go back to the surface, get men, get supplies, and then come back and save Floyd. And so Floyd is very thankful, he's very relieved, he says goodbye to Homer, and Homer turns and makes his way back up to the surface. 15 hours later, Homer would return by himself, and so at this point, Floyd has been trapped for 45 hours. And so Floyd, he's laying there kind of in and out of consciousness, and he hears the sound of Homer calling out to him, and then he hears the sound of Homer chiseling away at some rocks. It would turn out Homer's plan to save Floyd was basically to chisel away the side of this section of tunnel that Floyd was stuck in order to be able to reach down and somehow, some way, clear the rock off of Floyd's leg and then pull Floyd up. Now, Floyd understood, of course, that this plan of chiseling away the side of this tunnel to make it wider was going to take some time, but luckily Homer had shown up with more food and water, and they chatted the whole time as Homer worked, and so Floyd was in good spirits and Homer was very optimistic. But after 8 hours of Homer slowly chiseling his way, widening this tunnel, he hadn't made much progress and he was totally exhausted. I mean, you got to remember that the angle he was working at was horrible. He was basically crouched down on his hands and knees, chipping away at this rock. And so after those 8 hours, Homer would leave Floyd and go back home and sleep and eat and drink and kind of recover. But he told Floyd, don't worry, tomorrow more men will be here to help chisel away this tunnel and get Floyd out of there. But over the course of the next 50 hours, Floyd remained trapped inside of this tunnel with the rock pinning his leg, and despite Homer and several other men getting down there and very diligently chipping away at this tunnel, it just was not happening very quickly. And so over the course of those 50 hours, Floyd began going in and out of consciousness, and he began not being able to differentiate between what was real and what was not. At one point, he would say that he believed the cave had kind of opened up and these angels riding golden chariots with flaming wheels had come in to save him. And as they were lifting him out of the cave, he smelled food and coffee. And then suddenly his hallucination cleared and he realized he was trapped in the darkness all alone, still in this cave. And it was like it destroyed his morale. And so Floyd is really starting to go downhill, and the rescuers are realizing they need to do something, and they need to do something now. But at the 130-hour mark, things got even worse for Floyd. As he was laying there in the tunnel, this was sometime in the middle of the night, and so no rescuers were actively down there trying to chisel their way down to him. He was laying there and he was listening to the sound of the running water somewhere outside the cave, and that sound was kind of amplified down to him. And then all of a sudden, he heard the sound of falling rocks somewhere up above. And then when those rocks stopped and it went silent again, he could not hear the sound of the running water. It was very muffled. And that was when he realized that there must have been a cave-in somewhere higher up in the cave, which meant potentially there could be a significant block just to get down to him. Forget about widening this tunnel. I mean, he could be actually entombed inside of Sand Cave. And so Floyd did the only thing he could do, which was to pray. It would turn out that cave-in had indeed blocked the way for rescuers to get down to Floyd. And because of how extensive this cave-in was, the rescuers actually decided to start carving a brand new tunnel that would join up with the side of Floyd's tunnel. I mean, this is an even bigger undertaking than just chiseling the side of the tunnel that Floyd was in, which was their original plan and had taken several days. And so now they have to build this brand new tunnel to Floyd. And so finally, on February 16th, 1925, so a staggering 17 days from the time Floyd got first stuck in this cave, the rescue team finally punched through and reached Floyd. And as soon as they did, the lead rescuer looked over at Floyd, and then he paused, he turned up, and he just said, "Dead." It would turn out shortly after that cave-in, which sealed Floyd in completely inside of Sand Cave, at some point over the next couple of days, those rocks began to break free and tumble down the cave and began striking Floyd until finally one or several of those rocks hit him in the head or chest and killed him. So just imagine you are trapped. You've been there for several days. You're in total darkness. You're entombed inside of this cave. And periodically, rocks just come tumbling down and smash into you. Who knows how long it took to kill him, but that has to be one of the most agonizing ways to go ever. Shortly before
Damn.
that cave-in first happened, a photographer took a picture of Floyd, who at the time believed he was going to get out, and all the rescuers believed they were going to get him out. But shortly after this photo was taken, the cave-in would happen, and at that point, Floyd didn't know it, but he was doomed. Here is that photo. Floyd's body was eventually removed from Sand Cave. However, instead of being buried, because of the interest around this cave rescue that ultimately failed, there was a decision made to actually put Floyd's body on display inside of another cave. Basically, Floyd's body became a tourist attraction. And it would remain a tourist attraction for decades until finally he was removed from that cave and given a proper burial.
Thank you so much for watching.
All right. Let's switch our title here. How do you think the COD games are gonna go? We haven't played in a while, so that maybe we have such low MMR because we haven't played that they're gonna give us good lobbies. Yeah. Of course, restart. Oh, it's loading all these shaders as well. Jesus. Oh, I want to see how much. 0.18. All right. What is this shit? Full screen or something? Come on, just get me to the settings here. All right, settings, graphics. I don't want full screen. Exclusive. Fix your fucking shit, COD. This has been going on for like 3 games now. Full screen exclusive always fucking airs out. What? No. Okay. Oh my god, what is it downloading now? This fucking game is so fucking stupid. Verifying the files. How long is this shit gonna take? All right, we're
Today,
gonna
we have
we're gonna
a
watch
special
this
video for you
until
guys. It's a collection of 5 stories, and the very first story you'll hear is a brand new story.
hopefully this
and
doesn't
the other
take too
4
long.
are fan favorites. Now, those 4 fan favorites have all been re-edited for today's episode, so even if you've seen or heard them before, this will feel like a new viewing experience. But before we get into the format, so if that nudges us and On the morning of September 15th, 2016, an 80-year-old widow named Rita
I wanna cancel
Wolfenson
it.
shuffled her way into her kitchen inside of her brick home in Brooklyn, New York. However, Rita was basically blind, and as she made her way into the kitchen, she walked past her table and her foot caught a basket of newspapers
I don't think
on the
we're gonna be
ground,
playing COD
and it
tonight.
caused her to stumble and fall to the floor. And the second she hit the ground, she heard a pop. And the second
I
she
don't
heard that
think
pop,
it's gonna
she felt
happen.
a shooting pain in her hip, and she knew
Well,
right
it's saying
away,
it's only
very
2 minutes
likely, her hip
remaining.
was broken.
Validating.
Now,
So
of
maybe it
course,
won't
this is
take
a
too
huge
long.
problem if you break your hip, but for Rita in particular, this was a very, very serious problem. I mean, this was potentially life and death, and she knew it, and she also knew the reason this was so serious was all her fault. Rita lived completely alone and basically had cut off everybody in her life. For like 20 years, she had not interacted with virtually anybody in her life by choice. And basically, the reason for this all started 20 years earlier with her beloved son, Louis, who lived with her. But for some reason, 20 years ago, so basically right at the time when she cut off her whole family and all her friends, her son Louis just kind of inexplicably packed up and left her house without saying anything, and then she never heard from him again. And so suddenly losing her son for reasons unknown sent Rita into this spiraling depression, and the way she coped with it was basically cutting off the entire world around her, and she just lived in this house, totally isolated, totally alone. And so now here she is, stuck on the kitchen floor with a broken hip, unable to get up or call for help, and nobody is going to come by to help her. Nobody even knows she's in trouble. She's all alone. But despite basically being blind and knowing she's in this horrible situation, somewhere deep down, Rita finds this inner strength. She knows that if she's going to survive this, she has to save herself. And so she kind of rolled over onto her other side, despite the pain in her hip throbbing the whole time. She got herself onto her elbows, and she began low crawling her way towards the coffee table in the living room that was right near the kitchen. And she finally got over there. The whole time she's got this horrible pain on her side. She gets to the table, she reaches up, and she grabs her phone, which she basically never used because she didn't talk to anybody or take any phone calls. But she managed to get the receiver off the cradle, and she dialed 911. And so a few minutes later, the ambulance arrives at Rita's house. They come in, they find Rita, she's still on the ground. They scoop her up, they put her in the ambulance, and they go to the hospital. And when they get there, very quickly, they put Rita through a bunch of scans and tests, and they confirm, what Rita was already expecting, which is, her hip is broken. However, after telling her about the fact that her hip was broken,
No. Okay. Hopefully we're working now. Hopefully it's working. It was either downloading this or I was gonna play Rainbow Six, because we haven't played Rainbow Six in a while. When did I didn't buy Cold War. Why are these installed?
To a new Avalon.
Let's see, is anybody on that I remember playing with? No. And don't care about the battle pass. Alright, I'm gonna wait for this to complete the shaders. I gotta go fill up my vape juice for this. So I wonder if we have those other Call of Duties installed. Okay, I need why is audio? Menu music, gameplay music. Put our own music on while we're waiting. Yep, I acknowledge. What is... Oh, I don't want to do that. Hardcore. Search and destroy.
Can you hop in Discord?
Hello, hello. We're the only PC player in this lobby. FPS is at 120. Let's see if that goes up.
Hardcore search and destroy. Guns up.
What, my
Destroy the
loadouts
objective.
get deleted as well?
Bomb carrier down.
One's coming right side at me.
Area's clear. Get what we
I
came
still got
for
it,
next
boys.
time. Do better.
Audio master. Actually, I want to keep it at 100. Or turn that down a little.
Hardcore search and destroy. Another day in paradise, Black Ops.
Come on, I was on the other side of the wall. I'm getting easier lobbies right now because we fucking haven't played in a while, so they're making us think that we're good, and then they're gonna change it up, and we're gonna get some stupid ass lobbies in the next couple matches. Watch it, I'm calling it now.
They may be assholes, but they ain't cowards.
Yeah, it's all
Get
good. I
ready for
still
a
got
fight.
him though.
Actually, you didn't because God got me.
You're right. You're right.
I think motion blur's on. I gotta turn that off.
Hardcore search and destroy.
If it's on or not. It feels like it.
Eliminate the objective.
TACOM, launch a UAV.
Holy shot. Crazy.
Yeah, he's back there, Dennis. You're right.
So they knocked you on your ass. So what are you gonna do about it?
People still camping their spawns.
Hardcore search and destroy. Green light, go, go, go!
What the fuck is that grenade getting me?
Back building, go spawn. In the very back building. Yep. Ugh. Yeah, that one. Sound like somebody just climbed something.
One hostile left. Take that asshole down. Time's not on our side. Finish him.
Said bombs up here,
Let's
right?
go here. I forgot where it was. It was under graphics, maybe?
The bomb.
The enemy's planted the bomb.
Honestly, don't even know if that was. I think that was it. All right. Their grid.
I didn't see him go past.
Not good enough, Black Ops. Find another way.
My bad.
See, I knew that shit was on. I knew something was on.
You said take a shot, but I'm
I think that was it.
Hardcore search and destroy.
Get rid of that weapon, Blur. Welcome back, Justice. Is our
What's
first.
up? Destroy the objective.
Why do I have my mouse cursor? What the fuck? Come on. There we go.
We'll plant the bomb.
Damn it.
Charge is set.
Yeah, I think we're getting the same FPS as before. I don't know why my classes got deleted though. I'll have to reset up my class.
Oh my god, come on.
Hey, can you guys hear the teammates? Can you hear the teammates, Justice?
What were they doing there?
Yeah.
Device was disarmed. Quit feeling sorry for yourself. We ain't done yet.
That was
Unfortunately, when I do get unbanned, I'm gonna be mostly playing DVD because I need to get caught up with the Rift. So. Yeah, nobody's talking right now. I just.
Hardcore search and destroy.
I was just wondering if you could hear them.
Protect the objectives.
Oh shit! I thought that was a teammate. How do you switch? Alright, what else? I feel like my graphics got changed too. I don't think I had everything on high.
Of course.
No, I had that off. I'm gonna up that. I mean, maybe I did have everything on high.
Coordinates marked. Never mind. Black Ops, close this shit down. Only one enemy standing. Find them. End them. Arrogant SOBs thought they had our number. Good shit.
Alright, we're getting easy lobbies because of MMR. That's how they get you into this game again. They give you easy lobbies, you win a couple matches, and then all of a sudden you get fucking sweats up the ass.
Behind me.
We're all killing each other more than
Hardcore search and destroy.
3-3. Of course, we're down a teammate.
Eliminate the objective.
One's coming our spawn, B side.
Oh shit, their spawn.
Wipe yourself down and press the redeploy. Fight ain't over.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with myself until DVD comes back, until I can play DVD again. I don't have very many multiplayer games to play.
Hardcore search and
I got
destroy.
Fall Guys, I got Rainbow Six, this game. I mean, I guess I got a few. We'll be back on the Isle soon
Playtime's over.
as well.
Let's see what you're made of.
I'm fucking camping.
God damn.
One hostile left. Take that asshole
Damn.
down.
I know I did.
Yeah,
I
good
had
shit.
to. You're
Frank.
doing off.
Now get out there and finish this.
Fucking, what's our score? 5-6 right now?
Did you get a hit marker on him at least? Then we would have both got the
I don't even know what the max prestige is anymore.
Hardcore search and destroy. Guns up. Destroy the objective. Bomb down. Bomb active.
Oh, fuck. What? There's 3 people over there.
me and you as well.
Oh my god. Embarrassing.
On the bomb. Quit feeling sorry. It ain't done yet. Hardcore search and destroy. Dig in and defend the objective.
Come flat. Sit back and wait.
Oh shit, dude, they fucked me up.
Headshot trade. Crazy. 3v3.
I think I did have it on 90.
Just dropped out of satellite and then
All right, dynamic is off. We don't want frame gen on.
They must have hacked our comms. Go dark. We'll pick you up later.
Although I think it was, hold on here. I'm gonna change it after so I don't fuck anything up. I think it was, I don't think it was in video 1. On here, let's go back to graphics, quality. I think that's what we were playing with last time. I don't know why it defaulted. Oh, classes. Oh, is it because I prestiged? I think that's why. Okay, let's see. I don't even know. Hold on here. that the... Maybe that was my class. I only had 2 classes. Hmm. All right, I haven't played this map. I think... Oh, never mind. Playing this one. I just say I haven't played the skateboard map.
Hardcore search and destroy. Remind the fugitives that actions have consequences.
Oh my freaking god. I need a red dot on this thing. How do I modify a class? Gunsmith. Match in progress. Can't do any of that shit while I'm waiting for
Enemy device is set.
use this weapon instead. Yeah, we're probably gonna be passing on to the next COD. I think I'm gonna take a little break from Call of Duty. I tried to give it a chance, and unless something big changes with the next Call of Duty, I think we're done for a little while.
Engagement windows open. Go, go, go!
You know what? I have to have some. There's got to be some graphics that are screwed up here. I don't think I had everything on high.
Take it on the chin. Get ready for the next round. Hardcore search and destroy. All targets declared hostile. Happy hunting, Crimson.
Shit. Top window R spawn.
No time for moping.
Nobody have a fucking mic? That's because everybody's probably fucking banned because this is the worst fucking chat.
Hardcore search and destroy. Pacify the AO, kill team.
All right. Let's look at something. Okay.
Take a look at these reviews and testimonials and know that these are the best PC settings that you can get. I've been testing them all day with the help of the... Without further ado, let's get into the graphics settings first. Then we'll cover some of the Windows settings. Don't skip those. And then we'll get into things like controller and keyboard and mouse towards the end. Okay, so display mode, we always want to be in full screen exclusive. For my monitor, I'm using a 240 Hz 4K OLED monitor from Asus. I have a 4090, but these settings, while I do have a 4090, are built for you, even with a mid-range settings. Restart your shaders preloading because a lot of those settings don't take place and take full effect until after you restart your shaders. So make sure, because a lot of significant have my display resolution. My focus here is performance, but not having your game look like total crap. Screen refresh rate, you want to have maxed up to 240 or whatever your monitor refresh rate is. I have my display resolution of 4K. Important note right here, and I'll remind you multiple times. Once we finish up all of the settings and we apply all of these settings, we are going to click restart shaders preloading and then restart our app. Every time you make significant changes or really any changes to your graphics settings, restart your shaders preloading because a lot of those settings don't take place and take full effect until after you restart your shaders. So make sure you're going to go ahead and press that after we apply all of these settings. For display gamma, I have it set at 2.2. Gamma and brightness, I have it set up to 55, which brings out a little bit of those shadows. And this one is very important, okay? NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency. You set this depending on whether you are GPU bound or CPU bound. The way that you figure out which one you are is you go into your interface, you go down to telemetry, and then you add both GPU time and then CPU time. From there, you're gonna need to go into an actual map, whether it's a multiplayer map or the training ground, and you can see which number is higher. Basically, if the CPU number is higher, it means that it's taking longer for that CPU to render that frame. If the GPU time is higher, that means it's taking longer for the GPU time to render that frame. So how this affects you is when you have NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency set to on plus boost, it basically keeps that GPU spun up the entire time, as you can see from the description behind me. In CPU bound cases, it will reduce latency but increase GPU power draw because the GPU clock frequencies are kept high. Now for me, I am GPU bound because I'm playing in 4K, so that's really heavy on the GPU. So for me, I have it set to on because my GPU is basically working nonstop. It never has a chance to kind of down clock. But if you're CPU bound, you might want to run, or not might, you should run on plus boost. Okay, so run that test, figure out which one you should be. For eco mode, I have mine just set to custom. VSync, we want to make sure that's off. For custom frame limit, try this out and let me know what you think. And I've heard this from multiple different people that if you take your monitor's refresh rate and you subtract 3, so whether it's mine 240 Hertz and I make it 236.
Why are our settings resetting?
7 or 144 and you make it 141. For some reason that helps out with some frame hitching and some frame tearing. Don't ask me why. Run on plus boost. Okay, so I think we want to make sure that's off. For custom frame limit, try this out and let me know what you think. And I've heard this from multiple different people that if you take your monitor's refresh rate and you subtract 3, so whether it's mine 240 Hertz and I make it 237 or 144 and you make it 141, for some reason that helps out with some frame hitching and some frame tearing. Don't ask me why, but I've heard from multiple sources from multiple different people big into the PC scene that it helps. Try it, see if you like it. If not, you can run it on unlimited. But me, I feel like my game runs really smooth with it, so I run mine on 237, 240 minus 3. Reduce menu render resolution, you can set that to optimal if you want, but me personally, I like mine at native because I like high, quality for you guys when I'm making these videos. Pause game rendering, I have off. There's reduced
Do native. Let's see. You have that off. 10 minutes.
Boost quality when active. Basically, if you go AFK and don't, remember, it doesn't work your PC as hard. I haven't tested this a lot, but I feel like this would be nice for me because sometimes I walk away from my setup and I'll fall asleep on the couch and then I have my PC running for a couple hours. Focus mode, I have set to 0. High dynamic range, I want off. We
What is focus mode?
do not use HDR. From there, we're going to go over to the quality tab, and this will change to custom as we start to mess with things. Do not mess with your render resolution. Just keep it at 100 unless you really need some drastic changes to reach a targeted frame rate. Don't mess with dynamic resolution either unless you absolutely need it. More than likely, you're going to keep that at off. Now, moving on to the upscaling and sharpening settings, I'm passionate about this because I still see a lot of people getting some misconceptions about it. Yes, DLSS will help you get more frames, but it uses deep learning and this algorithm to create frames that, while it does give you a higher frame rate, it more than likely will result in you having a higher input latency. Yes, because you're having a higher frame rate, you technically will have a lower input latency, but it's just, for me, and I would much prefer to be on Fidelity FX Cast, and I set my strength to about 90. If your frames are absolutely horrid and you need the help of DLSS to get your frame rate up, you can try that, but just keep in mind, most research is showing that it does cause a meaningful amount of input latency, but if it does result in your game running smoother, that might be a trade-off you're willing to do. From there, we're going to do VRAM scale target. I'm going to put it at 90. If you experience any hitches or jitters, you can bring that down as necessary. I haven't noticed any, so I keep mine at 90. Variable rate shading, absolutely keep on. This is one of the best frame rate generators for your graphics settings. Now, this is where we get into a little bit of the, I want my game to look good, not just run good. I keep my texture resolution at normal. Now, if you want, you can bring yours down to low or very low, totally up to you, but I off.
Okay. Here's high. Depth of field off. No quality. I'm gonna do low. That's what he put. Very low.
Shader quality is low. The camos still look really good in this game, even with your shader quality set to low. On-demand texture stream, we've talked about this in the past. I keep mine at minimal, and then I just bring that all the way down to the bottom. Even surprisingly, with optimal and bringing the texture cache size up, I haven't noticed much of a difference. And all of our testing, including the guys over at FPS Hub, we haven't noticed any significant difference. Local texture quality, we have set to low. Shadow quality, we have set to normal. You can bring this down to very low if you want higher frames, but it causes those really off or as low as we possibly can. But do not skip the config files. And the Windows settings that I'm about to show you, because they will impact your performance just as much as what we've covered. So as I mentioned, vehicle for the rest of this stuff, we're going to set it to off or as low as we possibly can, but do not skip the config files and the Windows settings that I'm about to show you, because they will impact your performance just as much as what we've covered. So as I mentioned, all of that is going to be set to off or low, because all of these make your game look stunning, but they destroy your performance. Okay, we're going to finish up the view and then also go into the Windows settings that I'm about to show you, because they will impact your performance just as much as what we've covered. So as I mentioned, all of that is going to be set to off or low, because all of these make your game look stunning, but they destroy your performance. Okay, we're going to finish up the view and then also go into the audio and interface, but do not skip the settings I'm about to show you on the Windows side. So the motion reduction preset, we're going to change all of this manually. FOV is set to 120. ADS field of view is set to affected. Weapon field of view is wide, and so is the vehicle field of view. That just makes it smaller in your screen, so that way you have more awareness of what's going on around you. Definitely keep the blurs off, no world blur, no weapon blur, and keep the camera movements as low as you possibly can as well. Invert flashbang. If you want the flashbang to make your screen turn full music, I have it turned down, or for this video, I have it turned down. I personally don't like it. Then you can go in. There was a lot of controversy about this being pay to win. Everyone has access to the general setting, the default setting for this, and I personally like it on. Enhanced headphone mode is on. It helps you get a little bit more directionality, and then you can go in and you will have the universal setup. If you want a personalized setup, basically you scan that and you take a picture of your face and it measures the distance between your ears and the shape of your ears and creates a personal, a little bit more or tune video turned on. Mute game have off. Mute licensed music I have on because I don't want to get copyright strike while I'm making videos.
The fuck is Sucker Punch?
Asymmetrical hearing compensation is off, but there is something really cool here called configure frequency intensity. And with this, you're able to go in and change the individual frequency for both the left. Okay, for reduced tinnitus sound, I have on. That gets rid of the high-pitched ringing because I really don't like that. Voice chat, you can all set to whatever you want. I have all of mine set to on right now because it's so much fun whenever you take someone as body shield to track them down. For the interface, right, you can all set to whatever you want. I have all of mine set to on right now because it's so much fun whenever you take someone as body shield to track them down. For the interface, right now, I do have tips and tutorials kept on just because there might be some new mechanic that I want the game to tell me about. Eventually, I will turn all of those off. Skip introduction movie, I have on. For tooltips, I also keep those on as well. For telemetry, I generally have on FPS, server latency, packet loss, GPU time. I'm going to put on VRAM usage now and processor time, CPU time as well. Connection meter, don't have that on. It covers up a lot of your screen, but you do want the icons for alerts on right now. Subtitles, totally up to you, but go down to color customization and set your color filter to 2 and the color filter target to either tooltips. I also keep those on as well. For telemetry, I generally have on FPS, server latency, packet loss, GPU time. I'm going to put on VRAM usage now and processor time, CPU time as well. Connection meter, don't have that on. It covers up a lot of your screen, but you do want the icons for
GPU, VRAM. All right.
Alerts on right now. Subtitles, totally up to you, but go as well. Connection meter, don't have that on. It covers subtitles, totally up to you, but go down to color customization and set your color filter to 2 and the color filter target to either world or I personally like both with the intensity set to 100. It just makes the game a little bit more vibrant. That's very similar to the Deuteranopia color filter that we've been doing for years. It doesn't change a crazy amount like some of the filter to 2 and the color filter target to either world or I personally like both with the intensity set to 100. It just makes the game a little bit more vibrant. That's very similar to the Deuteranopia color filter that we've been doing for years. It doesn't change a crazy amount like some of the filter 1 or filter for Crosshair when it comes to like it used to be able to put your monitor that if you want, if you find anything obnoxious, whether it's medals and notifications, the elimination feed, the minimap, you can actually change the opacity on all those, which is a really cool feature as well. Now, we're going to go in. Before we forget, we're going to go back here like we mentioned, and we're going to hit restart shaders preloading. When we restart shaders preloading, we are then going to close out of our game, quit our game, and then boot it back up. After we boot it back up, it will restart the shaders preloading process, which might take a little bit, but it's going to be worth it. Once you restart the shaders preloading, you're going to exit out of the game again, and you're going to join me here, and we're going to talk about some Windows settings that will drastically affect your performance. So go ahead and restart your shaders preloading, boot up your game, let those render, and then close out your game, and we'll get started right here. Okay, important disclaimer. After this video, go and look up the best settings for your individual monitor or TV or whatever you're using, because there are so many settings that you could be setting wrong inside of your monitor that could cause ghosting, larger input delays, bad shadows. Look up like on Reddit or on YouTube the best settings, best gaming settings for your specific monitor. On top of that, make sure you have plugged into the optimal port for your monitor, because a lot of monitors can only give you the max refresh rate if you use HDMI or DisplayPort or vice versa. Alongside that, make sure you're using the correct cable, because a lot of these monitors will do the supported refresh rate with HDMI 2.1, but people are using like an old HDMI 2.0 cable that they found somewhere because it was long enough. Make sure you spend all this dang money on your monitor and on your gear. Make sure you're getting the most out of it by double checking all of that. Because if you're seeing the settings that we're about to change right now and they don't reflect what you paid for, then you're probably, you're scamming yourself, okay? Let's go ahead and get into it. So what you do, right click, go to display settings. That'll bring me back right here. That's the rule of practice for all games that you play. So follow display is operating and giving us what we paid for. So we're going to go down to advanced display and make sure everything's checking out. I have a 240 hertz monitor operating at 2160, which is 4K. If it's not showing what you need to, you can go into the NVIDIA control panel, go to change resolution. And then for me, I have to scroll down to where it says PC, select that resolution, and then I get access to my full 240 hertz. My other monitor is simply my Elgato, which I have sending over at 60 hertz. From there, I just use all the default color settings. But if you want a little more pop of color inside of your game, what you can do is throw on a little digital vibrance, and it'll make things a lot more vibrant for you. Me personally, I throw both of mine at about 60 on both my monitor and my Elgato. And anytime you make a change here, simply click apply. Okay, now we're gonna go in and we're gonna change some of the power settings. And this is gonna be a global setting that you can change.
Yay. Here, NVIDIA control panel.
And it will help out with a lot of your games, okay? You can either change it per program, but personally, I think you should change this as a general rule of practice for all games that you play. So follow me through step by step on this, and we're gonna go through all of them. So image sharpening, we have set to off, ambient occlusion, off, anisotropic filtering, off, anti-aliasing FXAA, off, gamma correction,
Wait, why is it not?
on. Get on. Gamma correction is on. Anti-aliasing mode is set to off. We can't change the other one, so we go down to background application max frame rate, off. CUDA G
Mode off. Background. None. Anti-currency, that's off. Background application. Off.
GPUs, all. CUDA fallback policy, driver default. Low latency mode, on. Max frame rate, off. Monitor technology, fixed refresh. MFAA, off. Open GL GDI compatibility set to auto. I'm using, once again, my manually selected RTX 4090. I prefer maximum performance on my power management, preferred refresh rate, application controlled, shader cache size, driver default, texture filtering anisotropic on, texture filtering negative LOD bias, allow, texture filtering quality, high performance, texture filtering trilinear on, threaded optimization on, triple buffering off, vertical sync
Jesus
off.
Christ. All right. Low latency. Max frame.
Gamma correction on. Get on. Gamma correction is on. Anti-aliasing mode is set to off. We can't change the other one, so we go down to background application max frame rate, off. CUDA GPUs, all. CUDA fallback policy, driver default. Low latency mode, on. Max frame rate, off. Monitor technology, fixed refresh. MFAA off. Open GL GDI compatibility set to auto. I'm using, once again, my manually selected RTX 4090. I prefer maximum performance on my power management, preferred refresh rate, application controlled, shader cache size, driver default, texture filtering, anisotropic.
On, allow, high performance, on. Triple buffering.
On, texture filtering, negative LOD bias, allow, texture filtering quality, high performance, texture filtering trilinear on, threaded optimization on, triple buffering off, vertical sync off, virtual reality pre-rendered frames. One, virtual reality off, and Vulkan set to auto. That was a lot, but if you change any of those, you're going to go down and you're going to click apply there as well. Once you apply that, we're going to make some changes on the Windows side. You're going to open up your Windows and we're going to make sure hardware that there are some disclaimers on screen for certain types of CPU. Have maximum AI corpses set to 0. That stops all the dead bodies from laying on the ground. 2 assets flying off of your RC 0. So that way, they're even if they have the slightest amount of.
All right, let's see how this looks. My chest is hurting. It'd be nice if chat wasn't banned from OBS again. I don't know why they took that feature away. Alright, we're gonna play one game and see how it looks. Fortunately, I gotta get off soon. Oh, already pre-selected. Oh. All right, let's see what kind of FPS and performance I get with this and how it looks. As long as it doesn't look like dog shit. What free item did we get in the store?
Time's nearly up. Close it down. Not your best work. Clean it up.
I'm definitely getting higher FPS.
Hardcore search and destroy.
I don't know if I like how it looks.
Protect the objectives. Enemy UAV inbound.
fucking creepers, man. Fucking creepers. Fuck this game, dude. This is exactly why I fucking stopped playing. Fucking chicken little shits sitting in a fucking corner playing this game. No fucking comms. Exactly why we stopped playing Call of Duty. For this reason. Game is boring as fuck. We really got put into the same fucking map.
Bomb plan in progress.
Teammates playing B.
I'm gonna change the
Bomb active.
brightness a little though.
If you're up there.
Only one enemy standing. Find them. End them.
Fucking waited like.
Where was the
Not bad,
brightness
John.
setting?
There's room for improvement.
Here's your other map,
Yeah, you
pussy.
almost killed me. I was
shit.
fucking on the other side of the door. I wish you would have seen my green dot and not shot him and he shot you.
I was about to go 30 him.
You don't care about green dots, so you just shoot anyway.
That's not true.
Hardcore search and destroy.
Going B.
Time to get our hands dirty, Black Ops. Get to work.
Flashbangs and shit out of here.
One going left and one's laying downstairs on the right. Hallway.
Fuck, man. Just fucking laying on the fucking ground, you fucking pansies.
You're a fucking cunt, dude. You pussy ass bitch. 1v4, one's hiding behind the stairs upstairs. You hear him, Matt?
Enemy scout pulse detected.
Yeah, I don't need to turn the brightness up.
NPCs in the
Everything was
red.
good.
It's now or never. So they knocked you on your ass. So what are you gonna do?
Gotta love coming back after taking a fucking almost a 3-month break of playing this stupid ass fucking game and coming back to fucking campers.
Come out. I'm defense. I'm offense.
Corner camping little fucking cunt.
Alright, I fucking come out of fucking hiding, bitch. Shit bucket.
Hardcore search and destroy.
Good point A.
Eliminate the objective.
Go up from the window.
Bomb carrier down.
There's like in the box up to the left. Could have sworn I didn't see him.
It is stupid.
That's good. A looks okay.
We're planting the bomb.
He's in the fucking garage.
Bomb is armed.
Garage outside. 2.
Oh, what?
He's way back in his spawn.
Yeah.
I'd watch
I
you
don't know if
right.
they're mid or
Justin,
left.
Steven. That
Where?
last guy was to the right. Probably pushing our spawn.
Our spawn?
Probably. He was by garage.
Yeah. Can't hear Justin.
I don't think he's talking. He got chat banned. Our side. All right.
They may be assholes, but they ain't
Damn, you gotta leave your
Get ready for a
spawn.
fight.
No, I don't want to.
Gotta move up.
Captain, what's up?
Stop it.
Hardcore search and destroy.
He just texted me. He said, "Chatman and Matt's giving shit callouts."
Protect the objective.
That guy was the guy that was in the so I thought the other guy died.
Hostile UAV established overhead.
What the fuck is up, man? I should have a I'm getting fucking 240 FPS. My reaction is, what is my latency? 6 latency, and they're somehow fucking beating me to my spots. That is so fucking stupid.
Bro, you're still hiding back here?
You didn't hear that guy?
Top. Nah, he's up top of the house.
Time's not on our side. Finish him.
I don't know how the fuck they're doing it.
Enemy device is set.
Who?
Hostile left. Take that asshole down. Bomb defusal underway. Bomb defused. Yeah, good shit, Mike. Now get out there and finish
Shitty
this.
ass lobbies with shitty ass teammates.
See
Yeah,
why
they
you
are
fucking
garbage. We
sitting in
just
your
smacked
spawn
them.
the whole fucking time?
Oh, good boy.
The office sucks.
Hardcore search and destroy.
Dude, dolphins suck.
The office. It actually doesn't, but
We're getting fucking
Guns
carried
up. Destroy
hardcore
the
right now.
objective. Bringing in recon.
Lucky ass grenade, dude.
Damn. Soprano could have been 1 second faster, bro. There's one in the water.
Yo, you just saw one back there. You're right. I don't know what the fuck your name is. Top of the leaderboard, he was back there. Yeah. To your left now. In that window.
I thought I seen one in there. How's B looking?
I'm over here. No one's here.
They're gearing up for a final push. Hope you left some in the tank. We're setting up the bomb.
Watch that boat. Seen that
You
boat.
just saw him.
Charge is set.
Roma, to your right. In that window. Yeah, he's straight ahead.
Got him.
Jump off.
Only one enemy standing. Find him. End him.
Oh, I love the other guys hiding in the spawn somewhere, probably.
We've taken the last 3 rounds.
Hey, logistic,
Guys,
bro.
you guys can't keep teammates because you camp so hard.
Literally texted on the last map. Any other map. Only winning because we're spraying through what? Buddy?
These guys are camping the spawn and fucking losing. All -2 something like this.
Hardcore search and destroy.
I don't know why my mic was set to 25. Fucking
clear
good
your
old
name?
Call of Duty,
It's
reset
where
your
it happens.
settings. Game is still busted.
Push him, B.
On the stairs.
Fucking hiding, you fucking little pansy!
On the right.
Come get me with your
Might be
fucking
overlooking.
balls, man! Stop playing with the fucking vagina!
Requesting recon above.
Attack on. Give me a UAV.
Fucking Christ.
We've taken the last 4 rounds.
That's why they can't respond right
You guys
there.
done being pussies and actually gonna come out of your spawn?
No, they can't. That was or something.
Hey, I'm gonna have a camera. Try to rush for it, guys, alright?
Good thought I
have a care package. I'll be in my spawn throwing it. Try getting it.
Hardcore search and destroy.
Alright, I'm not going through the middle. I don't know why I keep going through the middle.
Camp spawn.
Green light. Go, go, go.
Oh, I don't got a care package. What? That's gay. Push out of the way.
Oh,
Domain.
that was a grenade that got me. What a fucking bitch. 0 for 6? Jesus Christ, I'm bad.
Yeah, there goes my
Bad.
care
It's just a
package.
warm-up game.
West Point marking care package DZ.
It's only a warm-up game.
Oh, he's coming for you.
Who?
Here he comes. He's right in front of me.
Grab it.
Clock ticking, Black Ops. Close this shit down.
Get a CUAV on station above.
Really came for your care package.
West Point requesting CUAV.
Bomb going down.
He's in the window.
Bomb has been
Yes.
planted. Requesting care package deployed.
Alright, probably caught me in the middle. On our side.
Alright, I'm playing one more game after this, and then I'm falling to the
I
stream.
went upstairs. There's another one up there to your right somewhere. He's on the left.
No! I thought there was only one
A
left,
fucking
bro.
pansy.
Got it.
I think they got it.
Enemies have disarmed the bomb. Quit stealing, sorry. We ain't done yet.
12 and 5 for camping your ass off. Alright, we gotta try a new route here.
He wasn't supposed to be there.
Hardcore search and destroy. Dig in and defend the objective.
He's in our side spawn.
Got him.
Two
I
left.
got one. I got one. I got one by the car.
4v2.
Yeah. How you like that, buddy? Yeah. Oh.
One hostile left. Take that asshole down.
Damn, there's bad, and then there's you guys.
The CIA nothing without us.
Any other map, bro? Any other map?
There's bad, and then there's you. Let's see. Elements Control Center. Oh, never mind.
What kind of person were you before your kids?
What do you mean?
Like, did it change your life? Were you somebody else before that?
Yeah, back up for a minute.
All right, last game.
Nah,
I
stay
gotta
here.
get off.
You're terrible. And that's what I meant. They went like 0-30.
So I know we haven't really played much, but we have yet to play any of the new maps that came out.
Hardcore search and destroy. Shoot to kill. We're not here to negotiate.
You fucking get out of your spawn, man! Why do people play like this? How is that fun to you?
Not much time left. Put this to bed.
Oh my gosh, bro.
How do you fuck that up?
Do better.
That's crazy.
Hardcore search and destroy. Pacify the AO, kill team.
don't know, maybe we'll get a fucking fun lobby. One of these fucking games. What is going on with my fucking shit here?
Oh, he didn't. He didn't melee only.
Of course, we get put into a fucking lobby that is already fucking losing. This game is such fucking ass. Why won't the COD developers get it through their thick fucking skull? We don't want MMR. We do not want fucking to be put into a match that's already going that you're losing. And they wonder why 60% of their fucking player base is done.
What, girl? Hey, niece, you better tell your pappy to fucking turn up. I don't got time for that.
What the fuck is...
You're joking.
This game is so fucking stupid.
That nigga didn't blick nobody.
Stun incoming.
Boom! Stunned his ass.
Wipe yourself down and press for redeploy. Fight ain't over.
That pussy nigga at the bottom. Oh, I think he left the game.
Hardcore search and destroy.
Nah, he's still there.
We at the bottom, right?
Protect the objectives.
All right. That's going to do it for me. I can't play this stupid fucking game anymore. How the fuck? That's so fucking stupid. Anyways, I will be back tomorrow. I'm probably uninstalling this. I'm probably uninstalling this stupid ass fucking game after stream. I don't know yet, but exactly why we stopped playing COD on the channel was for that very reason. It's bullshit fucking matchmaking. Anyways, you guys take it easy. Have a wonderful night.